I can say this now because I don't work at a record label.
This is why you're here.
I don't own the record label. I didn't care. I was always in it for the sake of the artist, and I think that this is where I get really frustrated when I see this rhetoric online where it's like major labels, the evil monster. It's like, bro, like I worked at a record label forever, and I fought for the artist every single time. Every single time, and my artist knew that. I would always fight for you. I would challenge you when I thought you were wrong, but I would always fight for you. I was on team artist.
Okay, so but you're on team artist, but the label in there might not be on team artist. The label. So if you're saying I'm gonna say, hey, this is, the artist wants to go with this record for the single, and the label's sitting there be like, why? This doesn't make any sense. Why are we gonna put money into this if like we know it's not gonna work? Or they'll say we know it's not gonna work, right? So now you're fighting that internal fight inside the building. How are you navigating that?
So it's tough.
How are you, sir?
I'm good.
Thank you for coming, man. Appreciate your time.
Of course.
Listen, Nick Groff, amazing executive in the music business. I mean, how long have we known each other now? Maybe almost 8, 9 years at this point?
Yeah, maybe longer.
Yeah, maybe longer, right? It was during the bidding war days. But, you know, just to give like a very high level of who Nick Groff is, what point Nick Groff is SVP of A&R at Interscope, then becomes the GM at Geffen, and then moves back over to SVP A&R at Interscope, and now has joined the dark side in the management world with Rare Society. But you have a very extensive knowledge when it comes to the major label system.
Yeah.
You understand it very intently. Like, I've dealt with major labels my entire career at the highest level, at a mid-level, at the lowest level, right? But I don't have the intimate information that you would have when it comes to how this whole ecosystem works.
Okay.
So I really want to kind of dive into that because I think a lot of the viewers don't have that perspective, right? Like I talk to a lot of managers in this space and producers and whatnot, but when it comes to the major label side, not too much of that, right? So one of the first questions that I want to ask out the gate, when it comes to A&Ring, are major labels actually developing the artists, or are they just signing for the market share and for the data?
So I've watched the channel. I'm going to kind of pull back a second and explain what A&R is.
Perfect.
So A&R is artist and repertoire. That's what an A&R is. And I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about what an A&R does. And I'm going to speak in general terms from the perspective of a major label.
Perfect.
There's labels, distribution companies, we'll get into that later maybe, but an A&R at a major record label is like a talent scout.
Well, answer, what's repertoire? We know what artist is. What's repertoire?
It's the catalog from an artist. It's the music that the label is signing as a partner of. And so you're really the point person for the record label to scout talent. Now, you can scout talent by going to shows and saying this is an amazing show and I want to sign this artist. We live in a data age right now, so there's a lot of data teams at record labels that are saying these things are moving on the internet. But in its truest form, an A&R is a creative person that's sitting at the record label saying, I believe in this and I want our label to believe in that as well. Above and beyond scouting the talent, they're the ones that take the talent to the president of A&R or the CEO and they say, hey, I want to put a deal together for this artist, and they work with the lawyer to sign that artist through a bidding war or figure out the deal structure that makes sense to partner with that artist, whether it's distribution, long-term deal, single EP, album, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And above and beyond signing that artist, they then become the creative partner for that artist. In my tenure at Interscope, I did 2 different ways of being a creative partner. Sometimes an A&R is an active creative partner. An A&R spends a lot of time working with writers, producers, mixing engineers, mastering engineers. My network is wide with people that make music. And so when I meet an artist, they're like, you're an amazing melodist, but you seem to get stuck with lyrics. Do you want to work with a lyricist? Like, I'd love to. Okay, I want to meet this person or that person. The other role of an A&R is to put your ego aside, and sometimes people don't understand this, but sometimes artists don't need anybody.
Right. So when you say people don't understand this, who are the people that you're talking about?
Literally everyone. A&Rs, the label, like sometimes there's this misconception of like, we signed this thing because it was working, and so just because I have this network, I'm going to enforce this network on this artist, when sometimes the best thing you can do is just block.
Let it go.
Let it go, give them space, and allow them to create. Fast forward to the music is done. after the music is finished, the A&R is a politician for attention at the record label. All majors have a huge roster. So when you're working with an artist every day, making an album, regardless of whether you're blocking or you're actively helping them with people, you're then coming and talking to them about, like, what do you want to say in this album? Like, oh, it's a cathartic album about this breakup I went through, or it's my mom died and I really want to talk about it in this album, or I just fell in love and I want to talk about that. And you start to create the nucleus of creativity and storytelling around the album, and then your job is to get the building to understand the message. Because you're going to go to the marketing director, the publicist, the international, sports and licensing, whatever, and you're telling that artist's story throughout the label. When that is done, you're fighting for attention so that everyone understands the message clearly, so that when they go to their contacts, you've kind of perfected that game of telephone. There's not loose information on the artist. Everyone knows, oh, this is where it's coming from, this is why we're doing this is the song that's set up, etc. Now, do labels sign and develop artists, or is it a game of Moneyball? Let's simplify it. It's tough because
for those who don't know, Moneyball is the film.
The film where you're basically betting on odds.
Yeah, basically.
Like, there's an artist exploding on TikTok, the sound's moving, we're going to sign it because it's probably going to work anyway. There's a lot of that that goes on at record labels, because when you understand a record label's responsibility is to sell. It's a commercial aspect. They're selling music. So if you have more leverage to sell music, it puts you in a better position to make more income for that artist and for the label.
Right.
So it's an easier path to sign something that's working. Now, again, stepping back to what I talked about from an A&R's perspective, an A&R is a creative person. So when I got into it, there were also things that I just like. I like art. I don't create it. I can play Santeria on guitar, and I think that's about it. So when I got into music, it's because I have a deep passion for music.
Yeah.
And so in my career, I was very lucky, fortunate, skilled, whatever you want to call it. I had success as an A&R where I started to prove myself, and there were shots that I could take as an A&R where I said, hey, I want to sign this artist. There's no data. I love it. I want to help develop it, and I'm going to exhaust my time resource from the label. You guys have employed me, so it's going to be a time suck from your employment to me to develop this artist.
Okay.
And you kind of see both. But you realize when there's a development case from an A&R's perspective and a label's perspective, there's a huge time commitment to develop something like that. And now you're seeing some artists that early A&Rs took stabs at or involved themselves with. Like, let's use this last calendar year as an example. Charli XCX is like 6 albums in at this point. She's had success in the past. This isn't her first taste of success.
Sure.
But this success that she's having right now is a meteoric moment. It's 6 albums into her career. Then you have somebody like Chappell Roan, where there's been a lot of development. I think Jackie over there at Island was really early on Chappell Roan and like really built that up, or whatever.
Jackie Winkler.
And so I think that there's A&Rs who do take shots and they exhaust a lot of time into it. But I feel like a lot of the stuff that you see in today's top hits or whatever is stuff that was moving because there is data behind it. It's much quicker to market. And whether or not the A&R started with that or they started 6 years prior, 6 albums prior, there was time and effort put in by somebody. And we'll get into management in a second, because I think the manager is starting to take one of the roles of the modern A&R right now, but we can talk about that later. So, long answer to your question.
Which is what we want. No, for sure.
And then now simplified is labels do go after a lot of data-driven signings right now, specifically from the major side, because they're trying to capitalize on their leverage.
Even right now, in 2025.
In 2025. And let me also take a step back and explain, like, why. I talked to you about what an A&R is. Let's talk about what a record label is. A major record label is a nucleus of individuals who have a vast network and a specialized skill. So if you look at any major record label, they're going to have a marketing department, a publicity department, or someone who runs independent publicity, who oversees it. They're going to have an international marketing department. They'll probably have some sort of film and TV licensing department. They'll probably have some sort of brand department, or they'll tap into an internal Universal or Sony or Warner brand department. And when you start to understand that there's specialized people with a network, a lot of those specialized people can only tap into their network when there's leverage, right? So if you are pushing for the new Coca-Cola commercial, they're looking for something with extreme momentum or a massive song. If I'm the brand rep at Interscope or the brand rep at Warner, I'm looking at the catalog of music at the label saying what has the most momentum that's going to help me land this sync with Coca-Cola. So when, the other part of record labels you have to understand is when there's a developing artist, they oftentimes can't capitalize on the amount of the amount of departments that record labels have because they don't have the leverage to really tackle those opportunities yet.
Right.
And so the development is really about how do you create virality, or how do you create fandom, or how do you create momentum with music prior to getting to that point where it's like, okay, now we've created that momentum.
Okay.
Now the licensing guy from sports is saying, okay, you got some heat. We're going to get you in this college, football campaign. We're going to get you in this NBA look. We're going to get you in this whatever, because they're leveraging your heat. So once you have that momentum, it becomes easier to tackle all the different departments that a major has. But when majors are taking stabs at, I don't want to say undeveloped, but when they're taking stabs at artists in the really early stages without momentum, you oftentimes are left with an A&R and a marketing director who are trying to create a little bit of heat with you prior to being able to go out to those other departments.
Okay, so many questions.
Unpacked a lot.
This
Sorry.
is great. No, but this is great. This is great. So many questions. So, okay, even let's just talk about that, right? So the amount of artists that are signed who don't have leverage versus the ones that have something going on TikTok, have something going on, some traction, some streaming story, quote unquote. What would you say it is, like, the percentage-wise in terms of the ones that have leverage in the streaming story versus not developed, but Nick Groff says, I really like what this person has. I think they have a lot of value, but they're not there yet, but I want to sign them to a smaller deal. How much is happening between the two?
I would say this, in the last year and a half, 2 years, and in the future couple years, you're going to see the emergence of distribution have a major role in music.
Fair.
Because you have a lot of entrepreneurial-based managers and artists who are doing things on their own accord, who are building fan armies on their own accord, and they want to either retain ownership of that, or the label realizes, hey, you can't really exhaust our other resources yet, but we see that you have some heat on you. We just want to give you a little bit of money. We're going to get a little bit of ownership of it. Do your thing. So it's changing a little bit. But I would say that when you look at every major record label and you assess, like, how many superstars do they have? Where's the top heavy weight of it? Every major has like 5, 10, maybe
If that.
superstars,
Yeah,
like
if
superstars that demand attention.
Yeah.
And they're off cycle, on cycle. So it's like, I'm not saying at any given time they have 10 in market. They don't. That would be a lot. At any given time, they're juggling, okay, we're coming to market with the Gaga album, okay, now we're coming to market with the Kendrick album, they're coming to market with the Billie album. And it's not that they're dictating to those massive superstars, hey, you can't release on this date, but there is a degree where if they know there's another big artist coming, they may talk internally with those teams, whether it's the management teams or the artists themselves, to say, hey, there's a lot of stuff coming with another one of our artists right now. Maybe we separate so that you can go for that number one, or you're going to compete each other.
Yeah.
And again, when you get to that level, it's an open dialogue. It's not like, hey, you're changing your release date because so-and-so is coming.
Sure.
It's like, can we talk about it and understand why we're asking you to do this, or why we're advising you that it might not be the best time? So when you think that, hey, there's only 5 to 10, if you go on Island Records or Republic Records or Warner Records in Atlantic, and you look at the amount of artists they have, it's a lot more than 10. So
how many would one of these majors have, you say?
60. Like, they probably advertise the ones that are having a little bit of momentum. They probably signed a bunch of things that they haven't even put up on the website yet. And then they have a plethora of distribution deals or sub-label ventures or whatever that don't even really hit the website until there's extreme success. Then it's on the website and the sub-label ventures website. So I think that, when you look at how many artists, and this comes back to what an A&R is, right? Like I told you, an A&R beyond the creation of music becomes a politician fighting for attention, because the building is working 60 different artists, not at one single time, but they're juggling all these artists that are going on. And so when you understand your marketing director is working 10 other artists right now, you're trying to fight for that person's attention, or you're trying to create a clear message to that person. That's a singular relationship within the label.
Yeah. Do people know what they're signing up for when they say they want to be an A&R and they have to vie for
So-
people's attention? Because if I'm a creative and I come into the building saying like, I just want to help the best artists create the best songs, but then all of a sudden they say, well, you got to go in here and you got to start like championing and being a politician and talking to the right people and talking the right way. How effective is that?
This is why I clearly define what an A&R is: artist and repertoire. You have a lot of creative people that go around town like, I'm an A&R because I helped so and so find a song. It's like, like, no disrespect, but that's not an A&R. Like, you're a creative person, no question. You know, you have a great network, no question. You could help break an artist, no question. But if you identify artist and repertoire and you think like, take a step back. Say you're successful. Say you sign the next Nirvana and you put out that first record and you start to have success, and then you have Smells Like Teen Spirit or whatever, and you start to have that success. The modern idea of people running around Los Angeles saying they're A&R is the ones like, oh, I got him in the session with so-and-so. But now you're starting to look at a $100 million business saying, okay, we have this anniversary coming up. How do we create new moments for that repertoire that's coming from the A&R? And they're becoming more of a strategist as the projects get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I think that I've met over the course of my 16 years at Interscope a lot of people that come through internships or that come through assistant roles, or they're in other parts of the building. They're just trying to get in so they get into the A&R position, because it's this glamorized position of like, oh, you get to sign artists, you get to roll with them and have fun with them. It's like, yeah, that's part of it. No question, that's fun and it's awesome. But there's a responsibility of an A&R where you're literally managing an artist's career through their recorded music on the label's side, not the artist's side.
Yeah.
And it's a heavy responsibility to create value for that copyright, to create long-term value that artist is going to feel over the course of their career.
Why is it a heavy responsibility?
Because I mean, when people are making art, it's you're capturing a feeling. Like I feel like there's 3 reasons that artists make art. Some artists make art because it's cathartic. Like they must. They are purists through and through. They make art. It has nothing to do with commercial viability. They just need to create. That's one form of art, and it's amazing. And it may not make any money.
Are you signing those?
I feel like I signed 2 of the best of all time. I genuinely feel that.
Which is?
I discovered Billie Eilish and brought her into the building, and I discovered Jacob Collier and brought him into the building. Very different artists, but I believe their weight on pop culture will have a very, 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 very long and lasting effect in the history of time.
For sure.
I feel very proud of those 2 moments, but ironically, those were 2 artists that I didn't do a lot for.
And we'll talk.
Yeah,
we'll talk
we
about
can
that.
get into that
we'll
in a
definitely
second.
get into it.
But so there's the 3 types of artists: artists that make art for the sake of art,
Yeah.
artists that make art for the sake of commercialism. I won't point them out, but if you're watching this and you're studying music, you can see some of those people that are creating songs that you're just trying to create for a big hook, or you're just trying to create for a sing. They're constantly making songs for somebody else. They're trying to soundtrack somebody else's
I'll say
life.
it. I mean, you know, Max Martin talks about it very publicly.
Yeah.
So he's doing a lot of that.
Max Martin is, yes, as a producer, writer, he's doing that, and literally the best to do it.
The best, yeah.
But they're making art for somebody else. It's not a cathartic thing.
Yeah.
They're making art to be commercial. And then there's one class of artists that is very special, where they're making art for the sake of art, and it becomes commercial. And they don't change anything. They were making art just like they would in their bedroom. They never listen to other people's opinion. They just write what comes out of them. And for some reason or another, the right alchemy of parts happen, and they become big superstars. And they are,
Right.
It is amazing when that happens. I would classify Billie Eilish as someone who's done that. She makes art with her brother. They do what they want. They make the music that they want, and it's very successful. The success is not their own. There's a lot of other people that feed into that success.
Yeah.
But the identity of that success is coming from them.
Yeah. That sounds like, I mean, in all intents and purposes, Jessie has all the potential to be the superstars. But to me, of those 3 artists that you're describing to me, I mean, she hasn't gotten there, and she'll say that herself.
Yeah.
But she is that, the third. It's like she just writes what she writes. Nobody's telling her what to write, and in fact, if you're going to tell her what to write, get out of the room.
Yeah.
and she is.
I will not write that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But she's making that. That's her style, and that's what she does with her music.
I mean,
Well, so here's a third
I
artist
love
that you
her.
brought into Interscope, and I'll say that is when we were going through that bidding war, it was you who reached out about Jesse in my inbox, in Byron's inbox, and said, we need to meet, love Jesse, would love to have a conversation.
You just hear a voice like that, and you feel the pain and you feel the emotion in one note. This is something I learned from another artist I used to work with. I A&R'd Avicii before he passed away, and you know, there was a few of us. I wasn't the single A&R. There was a few of us that made records for Avicii, or worked with records for Avicii. But I worked with him, and there was a time during the True album cycle where he's like, man, I really want these type of vocalists like Paul Simon and Rufus Wainwright. We had this long discussion and meeting in the studio. And he's like, I just want to feel someone's heart within the first note of their voice. And I was like, whoa, I know exactly who you're looking for. And it wasn't that I know like, oh, this singular person, but I know when I hear that. And I'm like, you hear a note. And I remember in Figures, I heard the first note of Figures, and I was like, I'm in. Like, I hear it, I feel it. I don't even know what the rest of the song is about. I feel it. And you hear that in international music right now too. There's a lot of Latin music and K-pop music where I actually don't understand the lyrics, but I feel the emotion of the delivery. And I'm like, I love it. I have no idea what they're saying, but I love it. And so I think there's a lot of power in melody and tone. Also, music is the only universal language. You go anywhere in the world and there could be a hit song that's playing in a place where they don't actually understand the lyrics, and it's still a smash record.
Yeah.
Because they feel the emotion of it.
With Avicii, was it Aloe Black when you heard the
Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, Aloe Black, I had tried this, I didn't try. I was obsessed with this girl, Audra May, who made an album that was like this big band, like folk album. I was like, this isn't gonna work at Interscope, and I love you. And then Avicii had told me this, and I was like, oh, you gotta meet this girl, Audra May. And he was obsessed with her, and they did Addicted to You, and it was a big song for them. And there's another guy named Dan Tyminski where it was the same thing. It's a little bit of a funnier story, but Dan Tyminski had that vocal tonality that you just hear one note and you're like, that's it, like we've got to work with him.
Yeah.
And then he actually wrote the song with some of his constant Swedish writers that he worked with for so long, Salim Al-Fakir and Vincent Ponter.
Right.
And then Dan just sang the record. But yeah, when you hear those artists, you can feel their art exude from them, the ones that are classified where they're making art for the sake of art. And then time will prove whether that art for the sake of art becomes art for the sake of art and is also commercial.
Right.
And all three, I appreciate all three. I talk about music also like film. And it's like, if I'm sitting with someone who is a film buff, I know I gotta come up with like a methodical, like thought-provoking film. It's like, oh, what's one of your favorite films of all time? Like, honestly, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Oh my God, you're awesome. You have such good taste.
Yeah.
And it's like Frank Ocean in the music industry. Like, who do you like? I like Frank Ocean. Like, you have great taste.
You have great taste. You're hired.
But if I was like, honestly, one of my favorite films of all time is Fast and Furious 2. You'd be like, cool.
Respect.
It's one of the biggest films like ever.
Yeah.
But there's a degree of like, that's so
It's so funny.
commercial
Yeah.
that I don't think you really like film. But like, I get it. You like commercial music, whatever. But I think that
That's a good way to
I
put it.
appreciate all of those different films, and I appreciate all those different types of music. I have never been
And the middle is
a
Goodfellas.
critical person of like, I only like, if you look at my roster of artists that I've worked with, it was never like, oh, he's the rock A&R guy or the pop A&R guy, the dance A&R guy. Like, I had Jacob Collier and I'm doing Avicii at the same time. Like, it couldn't be farther apart. But I appreciated the worlds that they were building. I was like, I can either help block for you because I'm a really good blocker in the building, or I can help be a voice for you and I can help you with my network. And so I appreciated working with each type of those artists during my tenure at Interscope.
When you say very different artists, actually, Jacob Collier, and finding out that you signed him to Interscope,
Yeah.
is amazing to me because that's not the typical artist that you would sign. So what is that conversation like in the building to try and get people to get on board to signing this person? I know you have a track record at this point, so that's helpful, but
So
what other conversations are happening?
one of my mentors who doesn't know who my mentor is, John Janik. And what I mean by that is I would constantly be fascinated by how focused he was on merchandising and back catalog and these things. And I worked at Interscope for a very long time, so to see someone operate at that level as a CEO position was, it was easy to witness what he was doing because I'm in all these meetings, right? But I had some success and I approached him and I was like, I have to sign this kid, Jacob Collier. Like, I'm obsessed with him. He plays 20 instruments. I've never seen a human being play the audience. If you've never seen Jacob Collier, like, he literally walks into, first off, his touring footprint is massive, despite where his music consumption sits. Like, he has songs like 20 million streams or 50 million streams or 60 million streams, but he means, 5,000 tickets in pretty much every market around the world, India to you name it, which is a very rare thing for any artist.
Absolutely.
And but he'll sit there and he'll play piano, or he'll strum the strings of the piano inside the piano while playing it, which also crazy. But then he'll look to the audience and say, okay, this fraction of the audience, you're gonna go, when I point to you. You're gonna do that now. And over here, you're gonna go, ooh, when I point to you. So just wait until I point to you. And he'll play a song and then play the audience like an instrument.
It's crazy.
And it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So I got to see him. Like, he was, his manager Adam Fell managed late Quincy Jones. I had an opportunity of meeting them, and Quincy actually discovered Jacob.
Right.
He was signed to Quincy's production company, and then ultimately they started managing him with Adam. And I met them. I was like, I got to be in business with you guys. Like, I don't. I said this to Jacob, and I sent this to John. I was like, I don't know if we'll ever make money together, but I feel like you need to be at Interscope, and I'll help you do whatever you need to do, because I feel like you're going to be one of the most important people to music of all time.
Yeah.
And you're going to win Grammys. And I approached John, who I respect massively, and I said, I have to sign this guy. I feel like he's really good for Interscope's brand value. He's going to win a lot of Grammys, and I just feel like he's someone that needs to be in the DNA of this label. And power to John. He's like, let's do it. And Jacob's been nominated for Album of the Year twice as an artist with, he's never had a charting single ever. I think he's the first artist in the history of music to be nominated for Album of the Year without a charting single, and he's been nominated twice. And he's won like 7 Grammys and has, 12 nominations at this point.
Let's hold on that, because I think it's very important. You said this. He's going to be nominated for a lot of Grammys.
Yeah.
Why did you know that?
I feel like the Grammys is a lot to unpack, but I'll speak to it.
Hey, we got time.
No,
you guys good for time? We got time.
I'll speak to
Playbook. We got time.
There's a degree of the Grammys, which is the Grammys is made up of people that have a certain amount of credits within a field, and a lot of the Grammy voters are musicians. And so from time to time, you'll hear about like a Grammy snub. I think Harvey's doing a really good job of trying to avoid these in the future. But you'll hear of a snub. It's like, how did The Weeknd not get nominated, or how so-and-so not get nominated? And oftentimes it has to do with the weight of the voting members of the Grammys, right? Because there's a lot of engineers who became voting members 30 years ago, right? They don't listen to commercial music anymore, or they rarely listen to commercial music. And so sometimes things fall off their radar. Also, like a presidential poll in America, there's some times where it's like, oh, well, clearly everyone's voting for this candidate. Well, only if they actually show up to the polls are they voting for that candidate. All the young people like Kamala, but if they don't show up to the polls, she's not going to get elected. And so that happens in the Grammys all the time.
And if the president is also showing up to the city's campaigning, and if there's rallies.
So there's campaigns. Campaigning goes into the Grammys. But with Jacob, he's touched so many musicians over the course of his career, really world famous musicians that fall off the radar of commercial visibility, where he's friends with this, sitar player who's massive in this place, or he's friends with this bass player, he's friends with whatever. He's homies with Herbie Hancock. He was cool with Chick Corea, he was cool with Quincy Jones. And so I knew that his network of people that respected his craft was very wide within what I perceived to be a Grammy voting member. And so there was a degree of that where it was like, I feel like I can help him. And I told Jacob, I was like, look, I'm never going to give you a note that's compelling. Like, oh, in the mix, I noticed your drum sound was, you're so much better at that than I am. What I can do for you is hopefully be a conduit with the record label to get a workforce working for you, because you do have momentum. And I hope that I can help you with, from time to time, understand intention. So if you make a record like, I want this to be the radio song, and there's, I don't know, for Jacob, I'm going to use a real number, 300 tracks in the Pro Tools session. It's like, well, maybe we got to simplify it a little bit.
Wow.
Or if it's really wordy, or it goes into a lot of different parts, it's like, if you intend for this to be a more commercial record, there is a degree of this where you can increase your likelihood by playing by a set of rules. Go back to Max Martin, making
Yes.
music for the sake of being commercial. Well, with Jacob, I knew that I was never going to give him a reasonable note because he doesn't want to do that. So with him, instead of me giving him notes on hyper focusing on making the right song, it was just like I would listen to the records he would send. I'm like, hey man, I actually feel like this one could be a really good streaming song. But I wasn't dictating what he was creating. I was reflecting what he had already created. Out of these 10 songs, I think this one has the biggest likelihood. Would you be open to this being a single? And I don't really want that to be a single right now. I want this one to be a single. Cool. And I love that. Like,
Okay.
for that, I was in it for the cause. And John had given me enough freedom to say, like, let me develop this and let me work this. My end goal is Grammys. Just understand that it's not commercial viability. We may never make money with Jacob, but I promise you, that he will win Grammys and it will be amazing.
Definitely has won a
And
bunch
he
of
won like 7 with us.
Yeah, yeah.
He's still winning Grammys. He was just nominated for Album of the Year.
Yeah, exactly. We were on that. When I say we, his first time he was nominated for Album of the Year, Jesse was on that album.
Yeah.
On that note, when you're talking about Jacob and you're saying, I'm doing the blocking, I got to talk to the building internally. And so he says to you, or if you say to him, I think this should be the single, and he says to you, no, I want this to be the single, and you say, cool.
I can say this now because I don't work at a record label.
This is why you're here.
I don't own the record label. I didn't care. I was always in it for the sake of the artist, and I think that this is where I get really frustrated when I see this rhetoric online where it's like major labels the evil monster. It's like, bro, like I worked at a record label forever and I fought for the artist every single time. Every single time, and my artist knew that. I would always fight for you. I would challenge you when I thought you were wrong, but I would always fight for you. I was on team artist.
Okay, so but you're on team artist, but the label in there might not be on team artist.
The label.
So if you're saying I'm gonna say, hey, this
Yeah.
is the artist wants to go with this record for the single, and the label's sitting there be like, why?
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense. Why are we gonna put money into this if we know it's not gonna work? Or they'll say we know it's not gonna work, right? So now you're fighting that internal fight inside the building. How are you navigating that?
So it's tough, but you also have to I feel like transparency is king. So when I'm on team Jacob, or I'm on team Avicii, or I'm on team, MGK or Youngblood or whoever I was working at the time, right? When I'm on that team and I say, hey, I think this should be the single, we have that battle of the minds, the artist's like, it's so important to me that it needs to be this one, like, can you please work with me on this? Then I go to the label and okay, we don't know if we believe that the song has commercial viability or as much commercial viability as it would need for us to dictate a $100,000 music video, a $30,000 TikTok campaign or whatever. That's fair because they're in the business of monetizing repertoire.
Yeah.
So now I have to go back to the artist and say, hey, I got them to say yes, but you have to be pragmatic with me now. You wanted to shoot that $100,000 music video with that super, director, not this one. Unless you're wanting to make a massive artistic statement. And at the end of the day, if we are aligned, team artist, and we really want to do this, I'll still go fight for you to get that money. But I want you to understand the weight of that money because now you're pushing against everyone, right? And the more that you push against everyone and you are wrong, the less leverage you will have in the future. If you, as an artist, you're like, SZA or whoever, I'll use people that I don't work with. If you're like, hey, it's this one. And the label's like, we think it's track 7. You're like, nope, it's track 2 and I'm gonna go spend a fucking $1 million on it.
As an A&R.
As an artist. If
as
you
an
make
artist.
that stance and your A&R is like, hey, is this one. And you go out and you're right, the amount of leverage that artist, that A&R is gonna have on that building is gonna change drastically. We thought we knew, we didn't, sorry. What do they want to do next? So that power dynamic shifts when you have success.
But does it sometimes, because we're humans, right? So if somebody's standing, on the table, banging their feet and we're saying, this is what it's going to be, and it does work, it does happen where I'd imagine that there is resentment towards that with some people.
I think
or is that not the case?
Everyone's moving too fast. There is, but it's usually linear. It's like, oh, the head of A&R doesn't like me now because I stood up and the CEO is like, let's go with him. So you'll get some of that, but also the best way to blast through that is be successful. And by the way, if you're at a record label right now and you're hearing this and you're like, oh, I just started a record label, I'm a year-long assistant, and you're trying to get your footing, you're trying to climb up that corporate ladder, I would say to you, pick your moment to stand on the table. You will not get promoted until you stand on that table. When you finally have the understanding of like, okay, I think I kind of know how this works. I think I could work the building. I think I could be an A&R person. And you take that moment with your artist to be like, yo, we're aligned. It's track 2. Everyone's telling me it's track 7. This is gonna be my first battle. You stand on that table and you're right, you just became an A&R. And you not only did you just become an A&R, what do you want to sign next? The building will listen to you.
Interesting.
So it's really important for the people that are creative people within the record label to have that relationship with the artist, but to also like take moments where you're bold. Because if you fall into obscurity of just like waiting for the room to be like, what do we all like? Track 7? Yeah, me too. Cool, 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 cool. You become irrelevant really fast.
Yeah.
Like yes men and yes
That's a
women.
yes
like
man, yeah, exactly.
that mentality is toxic at any major company, but specifically at a record label.
Is that what makes Interscope one of the greatest major record labels in the world for the past couple of decades? Because like that track record at Interscope, Republic, incredible. What makes that label so great? Obviously it starts at the top with John Janik, right?
It genuinely is leadership mentality.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to get into this, but I'll just start with it. I spent 16 years at Interscope. There was a consolidation. I got laid off last year. And I had this, and for some people it was really dark. For me it was empowering, and I have my old story and it's great, it's awesome. I got into management, I got to go do that, it's cool. But on my parting message, I had talked about this, and one of the things that I said was, look, what you will notice about successful people in the music industry is they're first in, last out people. And take note of that, because those people that don't ever turn off.
What does that mean?
First in, last out.
Yes, okay.
They're not necessarily coming to the office first, but they're living and breathing it. It's not like a 9-to-5 job for them. Like they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, oh my God, we should have gone with merch revision 5, not 4. Shit, gonna send a note. And my experience working at Interscope under Jimmy Iovine, which I had no power. I just got to view Jimmy. I was an assistant when Jimmy was there. But I got to see Jimmy. He was obsessed with the success of Interscope, the success of his roster, and the later years, the success of Beats. And that obsession was felt from the top down. And so there was the foot on the gas mentality. And I know some of my friends at Republic, they have that identity. I didn't work at Republic, but I see it. And I see successful people around the music industry. You're like, oh, I know why you're successful. You're obsessed with this. This is a passion for you, and you're constantly in it. So with Interscope, I feel like the leadership from the top down with that focus on success has been really, really intense. And John is someone who comes from the background of Fueled by Ramen, where he started a record label in his dorm room, signing Fall Out Boy and Paramore and all these like pop punk bands. He started breaking them on the Warped Tour. He understood the value of t-shirt sales, because that t-shirt sale allowed them to rent the bus, allowed them to get to the next shop, which allowed them to sign CDs at the merch store. So he really understood the value of physical product, merchandise, and touring, and music. And when fast forward in his career, when he had a lot of success and he came to Interscope, we were in a transient, not we, Interscope, the music industry was in a transient time where Frontline was such a big focus,
right?
But people weren't understanding like, oh, it's the anniversary of that song.
What's Frontline?
Like it's catalog that's been released within the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so there was no emphasis on back catalog. And so you had Universal, Warner, Sony, they have separate divisions of people who, I'm generalizing, old marketing directors and A&Rs who kind of aged out of being the young person in the room, and they were in charge of catalog. That is such a general statement and probably not fair, and I'm probably going to get roasted for it online, but you'd have this mentality of a little bit of disconnect from the artist, the manager, and Frontline. And so these anniversaries would get lazy. It'd be like Urban Outfitters wants a new disc for the 10th year anniversary of Guns N' Roses, like, we made a red one. And it's like, cool. But that was your opportunity for the 17-year-old who wears the Guns N' Roses t-shirt to actually listen to Guns N' Roses. You should have used that 10-year anniversary for a moment. And John was one of the people that was like, no. We got to bring this together. You got to make sure that we're celebrating the anniversary editions, the first album, the first music video, the first time they performed at Lollapalooza. We got to do that. We got to bridge the gap with merchandising. And I think that, that's something that I saw him starting to do years ago, and now a lot of the labels are doing that. But it's this concerted effort of like, there was a moment like 5 years ago where like, I can't remember if it was Leo or someone was like, it was like, you got to always be on. And for artists, like, I have to always make art all the time. That is the heaviest, most daunting thing you could ever say to me. And but then the always on mentality flipped to like, no, make an album, then tour the album, then have commerce drops and merch drops, then celebrate your first record, and then do something in the film world, or Lana Del Rey, like go make art or go paint or do whatever, but always have a presence in the artistic community, whether you are the focal point for the presence, or we were talking about before the cameras turned on, Kai Cenat and the way that he's amplified his brand around what he's doing. Like, it doesn't always have to be the artist who can amplify the brand around what they're doing.
100%.
So I think that's what's created a lot of success at Interscope was a clear focus on success, and then also signing the right artists. Like, you have to sign the right long-term artists, and you have to have the right alchemy of people that are making prolific albums over the course of time. Eminem is still making records that are massively successful, and he's been an artist signed to a label for 20 years, whatever it's been.
Interscope.
Yeah.
Tell me some of the artists that you signed.
So
wait, actually, there's the ones that you signed, but the ones that you brought into the building as well, because there are ones that you brought into the building that you never signed.
Yeah. Right. There's only a few, to be honest. So this is where also, like I told you, the responsibility of an A&R, but it's not always a lone wolf thing. There's a committee of people that work it. So I worked Avicii. I didn't sign Avicii. He got signed off of the back end of Levels, and we came in and we said, hey, let's make some music. We started working on music with him. The person that signed him moved to a different position, and we started A&Ring the project with the manager, the publisher, and the Per Sundin, who was running the Nordic region for Universal Music Group. And we made the True album together, where Tim would spend time in Los Angeles, and he worked Monday through Thursday on music, and we set up sessions, and it was me, a guy named Neil Jacobson, who was my mentor, the guy that hired me, and then the publisher, the manager, and Per. That was the A&R team. I placed a lot of records. I had a lot of conversations with them in the studio about vocal tones, but I wasn't the only one.
How often are you going in the studio and you're having these conversations?
When Tim was making True, Monday through Thursday.
Wow.
Like it started to become like a comedic skit where I was the label guy. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna let you guys do your thing, and I would leave, and he would make fun of me, and it was like it was our thing. But it was Monday through Thursday, and I would set up the sessions with those people that I mentioned, and we would then listen back to the music, and we would dissect it. And Tim was one where he appreciated the A&R help.
Right.
Like, he had a very clear vision of what he wanted. He said, here's the kind of voice I want. Like, do you have ideas for me? Like I said earlier, it's a little bit of a longer story. I'll tell it real quick. But Hey Brother was a big record for Avicii. It was the second song after Wake Me Up that really became a multi-platinum hit.
That's such a different sound to what he was doing prior.
It was. And that came from him. He was like, I want to do something different. I have this idea. I want it to be more organic. I want more instrumentation. I want to make songs. These people are sounding like vocalists. Neil, I'll give him credit. He was like, well, what if we did it to a single instrument accompaniment at a tempo where you weren't getting lost in the production, but we just focused on the song, which was brilliant. And it became something that every DJ ripped off, but it really started with Avicii. And so Wake Me Up was a guitar vocal with Mike Einzinger from Incubus playing guitar.
Oh, really?
And Avicii just like vibing out with him, making chord progressions.
I didn't know that.
They made Wake Me Up, and then they're like, man, who do we put on this record? And a guy named John Eman had signed Aloe Black, and he was taking him through the building. We were playing records. He comes in the office. He's like, man, you should work with Aloe. And he's like, he has the voice that we're looking for. Like, let's do it. And they cut Wake Me Up. But Hey Brother came to be because I was in the studio with him. He had written this song with Vincent Pantera and Salam Al Fakir. And he's like, I don't want to keep them on. I want to put somebody else on it. And we were looking for a voice forever. And I had my iTunes, and I had downloaded the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou soundtrack, which was a soundtrack from a really big movie. And it was George Clooney and the Soggy Bottom Boys, and it was about Americana music. And George Clooney's...
That's the Coen Brothers?
I think so, actually. Yeah. But it was there was a song on there, I'm a Man of Constant Sorrow, that George Clooney sang, which actually Dan Tyminski sang, but in the movie, George Clooney sang it. And Dan Tyminski was like a Nashville legend. And I was like, yo, what's the name of that song that we're looking at the vocalist for? Like, literally in the studio. And he's like, Hey Brother. And I just put Brother. And the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou soundtrack popped out. I was like, holy shit, have you ever seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And he's like, no, what is it? I was like, I bet there's a vocalist on this. We just started going through them. I was like, what about this guy? He's like, I love it. So I reached out.
Wow.
So it's like, that's like the aspect of like being a creative person. There's plenty of people in LA like, oh, I came up with a song or whatever. That's not being an A&R, but there is A&R aspects in that. And then it's about how do you bring it to market and what do you do, whatever. But I worked at Avicii, I didn't sign him. I discovered Muramasa, signed that to Interscope, which I love him. He was also signed out of the UK from Polydor. Brilliant sound designer, DJ, producer, creative person, makes art for the sake of art, no
That
question.
self-titled album is a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite albums of the last 10 years.
I had heard Soundtrack to Death, which is something that he put out before then, and I became obsessed with a song called Love Sick Fuck at the time.
Yeah.
And we put A$AP Rocky on it. A$AP.
Wait, that wasn't on the self-titled album?
No, Love Sick Fuck was.
Yeah.
Without A$AP. And then we started working together, and he's like, I like these kind of rappers, I like these kind of artists, like it'd be awesome to do something with these people one day. And randomly, me and Neil used to work with Robin Thicke, and Robin Thicke's manager then managed A$AP. We're like, hey, can we get A$AP in the studio? And we just got a call one day where he's like, A$AP's in London, if you can book Abbey Road in 2 hours, he'll cut it. I was like, okay, like, it sounds good. But signed Muramasa. I found Billie, brought her into a joint a label that we had called Darkroom, which is a joint venture of Interscope, because I found Billie before the song was on Spotify. I thought Spotify was killing the blog, and I had worked with, I also signed this kid, Griffin, with Darkroom, and I used to manage Griffin with Darkroom as well. And the way that we broke Griffin in the early stages was leveraging putting all these it was when MCNs were a really big thing, and you had these like conglomerates of companies that owned a bunch of YouTube channels, which they still I
still
guess
kind of a
they
thing.
they're getting way bigger because Create Music was one of them, and now
Definitely.
Create's like buying
Yeah.
catalogs
Yeah,
for
exactly.
$6 bajillion. But we went and we did all these like YouTube channels like Mr. Suicide Sheep and Mr. Rebels and all these things. And we also leveraged all these blogs that were reporting the Hype Machine. And so we would break artists off that, and Griffin off of getting all these blogs to post a song. And for the fan, they were reading about the artist, understanding a little bit of their story, and consuming the music through blogs. When Spotify really started to break, the blog died. And it became conversations with people in music like, oh, what are you working on? Like, oh, I got this new artist, but we have this song on Pollen right now. And you'd be like, oh, I guess it's kind of cool because Pollen's kind of a cool playlist, or Lorem, or whatever it was. It's kind of a cool playlist, but like, I have no idea who that artist is, what they're from, like who they are, etc. And so I had found one of the blogs that I loved called Hilly Dilly, and there's this writer named Taylor Rummel, and I was like, man, like, I would love to hire you. Do you want to be an A&R one day? Would you be an intern? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. I hired him in December, and he was supposed to start in January. He's like, can I send you like some shit that I'm just writing about? And I was like, for sure, please. And he sent me a bunch of music. He sent me Billie Eilish, Ocean Eyes on Christmas Eve. I finally listened to it on New Year's Day.
What year?
It's
2015?
Yeah, I guess,
Yeah.
2015, 2016.
Yeah.
The song was not on Spotify, so whatever year the song came out on Spotify, before that.
Okay.
And he's like, I'm her first write-up ever. Her manager is based in LA.
Wow.
He just pitched me the song Blind. I think the song Ocean Eyes is awesome.
Wow.
And he's like, and then he gave me the context. She's 13. She wrote it with her brother, who can't remember, 17, 16 at the time, whatever. She wrote it with her brother. She's based in LA. You should meet her. And I was like, whoa, the context of a 13-year-old writing this changed it for me, because that context was everything. There was another girl named Lapsley at the time who was doing really well in the UK. We had Lana on the roster. And when you hear Ocean Eyes and you listen to those two artists, it is a very, very good song. I don't want to diminish the value of the song, but it was in pocket for those other artists. But when you hear the age and you understand the maturity of the voice and the maturity of the song, it's like, whoa, I got to meet this person. And then you meet her and you're like, star. No question. Get it. I get it. Star. And
What was it that made you say when you met her, like, oh, she's a star?
the quiet, she was, at the time, she was quiet, but just the quiet confidence. And her brother was so articulate, such a great songwriter. You could see it right away. She was wearing baggy clothes. It was also at a time where you had this like preconceived notion of what you were going to walk into. I referenced Lana and Lapsley. And I was like, okay, she's going to love Vampire Weekend, and she's going to love this. And this is like, I'm a cynic. I shouldn't have gone into it like this, but I'm like, I kind of know how she's going to dress and how she's going to operate and what her culture is based on the song. And you get to her and she's like, oh no, she loves Tyler the Creator and she dresses in baggy clothes and she's way cooler than I am. And like, shit, I don't know anything. And so it was the culture of fashion, it was the culture of presentation and the maturity of the song. And then when she did the Oceanized music video, you're like, oh, protect at all costs. And candidly, I didn't really do much with Billie outside of just like, she's awesome, we should sign her. And I brought her into a sub-label because I didn't think it was going to blow up yet. And then in the middle of the deal, it exploded. And so, it's become a huge thing since. But brought her in.
But when you say protect her, what you're also thinking about here, to my understanding, is this is a 13-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So how are you navigating that, and how's management
actually? Billie has a phenomenal management team, a phenomenal family. Billie is like an alchemy of perfect. She's very fortunate. I feel like I meet a lot of artists that are coming from a place of like pain sometimes, and her family dynamic is awesome. They're protective, like her managers have done it before. Her manager was signed as an artist years ago, or one of them, she has two. Signed as an artist years ago. Yeah, Danny and Brandon. Danny had been through it. He actually was in a band with Ariel Rashad, who produced a bunch of the Vampire Weekend stuff, which blew my mind.
Danny was?
Danny was in a band with Ariel.
Hey, Danny, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, blown over spot. I can't remember what they're called, like Elephant or something. Like, I don't know. But it was, so he'd been through it.
And
so
immediately after
so it's like, dang, like you actually have a protective family dynamic, a phenomenal manager, a co-writer to write with. And I remember, like, it wasn't like, I wasn't a prolific thinker at all. Initially, there was producers where I was like, oh, let's get so-and-so to produce this song. Like, I think this is cool. When the party's over is cool. I loved when the party was over, or when the party's over. She had that really early on. And then we get these versions back and we're like, and I don't even know if she knows that we got these versions back, to be honest. And we got them back and we're like, I remember calling Danny, I was like, I think I like the Phineas versions better. I was like, am I fucking this up? Like, get away. Like, and so it became very apparent, just like, hey, just kind of give her space. And so my role in the Billie stuff as a utility player of Interscope didn't really exist beyond that. Like, I high five her when I see her in the hallways, but like, this is the other side of it, is like, be egoless. Like, and it bothers me from time to time when I forget that I need to put my ego aside. But she's become Billie Eilish because of what happened. So like, that was the best thing for her.
Right.
And my job as an employee of Interscope Records was do the best thing for the artist.
Yeah, because you're saying if you were involved, who knows if maybe potentially the butterfly effect, it would have done something completely different.
100%.
Right.
But I'm very proud to at least understand, and I identified like this is
that's your credit.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's your credit.
And so I worked Billie. I signed this kid, Dean Lewis, towards the end of my tenure at Interscope. He had a big song called How Do I Say Goodbye that was a song about him hearing about his dad having cancer, and how do I say goodbye to the person that gave me the color of my eye, or whatever that lyric is. It's like, oh my gosh, this is an evergreen about loss. This is a really emotional song. I'm all in. And he's gone on, he's doing arenas now. That song has like 600 million streams or whatever. I signed Jacob Collier and developed that for the entire Jesse series. So he has a 4-part series called Jesse, Volume 1 through 4, where he was nominated for like 7 Grammys for that. And I was really proud of the work that we did with that. I'm just going to shoot them off. Whether I signed or worked them, I worked LMFAO, Robin Thicke, I worked Machine Gun Kelly. I did Tickets to My Downfall with Machine Gun Kelly. I did Mainstream Sellout with Machine Gun Kelly.
When we sat down the other day and we had a coffee, you told me a really interesting story working with Machine Gun Kelly. Can you just tell me that story again, where it's like you are now the label, Big Bad Label, and you're first meeting Machine Gun Kelly?
He's going to love this one. I do love him dearly, though.
It doesn't have to stay in the pod. We can take it out, but if you don't want
it's fine.
Okay.
He had been signed to so this is what I'm talking about. Like, there's some of it which I signed, I found it's awesome, but there's also stuff that was signed to the label, and they were either floating between an A&R, or I connected with the team and I started A&Ring and I became the A&R, or whatever it was. With Machine Gun Kelly, he was kind of floating on the label where he had done the last few records kind of by himself, and with a guy named Irv, who's on his team, who's awesome. And they kind of just did their music. And he started working on, he had a conversation with John where he really wanted to bring out the side of like the guitar side of who he was. And he's always been in the scene. I didn't realize it until I had done my research, because I liked Machine Gun Kelly, but I wasn't super deep in his catalog. And then when John called me, he was like, hey, you're doing a lot of rock stuff with us. You have a lot, I had managed a guitar player that was doing really well, and I had Youngblood that I was working with. I'd signed another producer who was doing stuff in the guitar world. He's like, you seem to get this world. It's the world I come from. He's like, would you be willing to meet him? And he did a pop punk album. I was like, man, like, you know, I'm turning 40 this year. Yuck. But when I was growing up in high school, I was listening to Blink-182 and Death Cab for Cutie and Unearthed and everything in between those pop punk to rock to, you know, emo to whatever bands. And so when I heard the beginning of Tickets to My Downfall, I was like, I completely understand this. Like, I went to high school in Empire. It's like, that was born and bred in like surf and skate and motocross, and like, I felt it. And so I was like, I'm down to meet him. And by the way, power to John again. He didn't say, I'm the CEO of the company, you're an A&R for me, you're working Machine Gun Kelly. He said, will you listen to this and let me know if you could be passionate about it? And I was like, that blew my mind. And I was like, yeah, I'll listen to it. And I listened to it. I was like, man, he has some stuff here with Halsey. He has some stuff here with Trippie. He has some stuff here with Travis. Like, this is a really weird combination of artists, but at the same time, it really does make sense, and I think it could be successful. And so I had my first meeting with him, and it's his team, it's him. And, you know, I'm not going to speak about his previous team, because I think a lot of the animosity came from them, but sometimes the easiest bad guy to an artist manager is the label. And sometimes it's justified.
Correct.
Sometimes it's 100% justified because the label didn't prioritize something, or they dropped the ball, or they didn't market something well enough, or they didn't execute something.
Yeah.
But other times,
Sure.
it's the easiest scapegoat for a manager to be like, I'm dealing with a travel issue here, I'm dealing with a touring issue there, the merchandise is here. Not all of it is my fault, but a lot of the weight is falling on me.
I appreciate you're going to say that, because that does happen for sure. You got to point fingers somewhere.
It's
well,
a
you
reality.
don't have to, but a lot of people will do that.
It's a reality.
Yeah.
And so with a manager and an artist, the relationship, everything is funneling, for many managers, everything is funneling to the manager. And so all the problems also fall on the manager's head.
Of course.
And so there's some times where it's like, okay, I mean, I'll use an extreme example. If the manager forgot to tell the label that a song was supposed to come out, and then it doesn't come out, and the artist's like, yo, why didn't the song come out? It's like, fucking label, man. And it's like, it becomes easy to push fingers at them.
Yeah.
So I can't speak about exactly why, but
Sure.
there was frustration between MGK and the label.
Yeah.
Not with John, he loved John, but MGK and the label, the big bad label. And I was the beneficiary of that frustration in that first meeting. We sat down, and I'm here because I've listened to a version of Tickets to My Downfall. I have some thoughts, and he's there because he wants to air some frustrations. And you know, this is where A&R becomes difficult. It wasn't just like, I'm a creative person, what do you want? You want my opinion on something? It's like, no, you're gonna have to work through some shit right now. And he was like, the label did this, and the label did that, and they don't care about me, and this is why I'm mad, and this is da. And I just stopped him in the meeting, and it was very heated. And I was like, I'm not gonna speak to the sins of the past. I don't know what happened, I don't care. That's not why I'm in this room. I'm in this room because I understand rock music, and you made a rock album, and I'm passionate about that album, and I'm gonna help you break. And if you want me to help you break, we're gonna work through this, and we're gonna move forward. But if you wanna talk about what happened last time, I've been here for whatever it was at the time, 13 years, you've been signed forever. I'm gonna go back to John and say, I don't wanna work it. You're gonna go back to John and say, I hate that guy. You'll get somebody else, I'll go do something else. I'll be fine. And it kind of disarmed him to the point where he's like, oh, all right, let's listen to the album. And we started listening to the record, and there was a bunch of songs on that record, and this is where the creative part kicks in. Irv had said, and power to Irv because he also recognized it, he was like, yo, you didn't play in Bloody Valentine. Kel's like, that's not on the record. And he played it, and I was like, that's your first single. And he's like, nah, that ain't on the record. And I was like, okay, I'm just telling you, that's your first single, and here's why. And I was like, it's a really great melodic song. It's gonna be an entry point for you. He wanted to go with Drunk Face. He was like, I wanna go with Drunk Face. I was like, no, We don't want to go with Drunk Face coming into this scene. You're going to want to go with something that has a lot of guitars, that's less rhythmic.
You're saying this all in the meeting. The first time you're hanging.
First time, because it's the best opportunity to say, I have conviction with things that I believe, and you're telling me you want to be commercial. And again, I didn't dictate how you made this album. You made this album. So this all came from you. But I will tell you, if your goal is to break at alternative radio, don't go play Drunk Face that's going to need a crazy edit that's all rhythmic. Go with the song with heavy guitars that's melodic. And he was like, all right, let's do it. And it became a hit right off the bat. We put it out, it started streaming like crazy. We sent it to alternative radio, and it started going.
Yeah.
And the next fight we had was actually my ex's best friend. And my wife remembers this so clearly. We were driving back from a restaurant in Malibu, and he calls me the day before the song comes out. Not even the day before. He calls me at like 8 p.m. The night before the release. He's like, pull it. That's not the right song. We need to go with a different song. I think he wanted to go with All I Know with Trippy or something. And I was like, no. Black Bear has a bajillion monthly listeners right now. Again, you wrote the song. I'm not dictating your creative, but I'm telling you it's the next best strategic move. We established the guitar sound. This is more of a rhythmic song. Black Bear has a huge footprint. You have a huge footprint. This is going to work. I promise you. And he's like, all right, but I'm telling you, it's going to fail. We'll see tomorrow. And it was the biggest, it wasn't the biggest thing he's ever done, but it's
up there.
One of the biggest things he's ever done. And it was this creative back and forth. But again, one of the things that I established in that meeting in the beginning was like, I have a passion for this music. My boss said, do you want to work this? He didn't say you have to work this, so I don't have to do anything with you right now. And you're signed here, you don't have to do anything with me right now. You can go back to him and say, I want to work with somebody else. But when you establish that creative trust, and then you have the success of feet on the table, whether it's to the artist or to the label, and that success happens, trust is starting to build. So I really appreciated my time with MGK and working through that, and ultimately we became friends through it, and we challenged each other creatively, and sometimes I was right, sometimes he was right, sometimes neither of us was right, sometimes both of us were right. But that era from Tickets to My Downfall on, I mean, when I started working with him, he was like selling out the Wiltern, and then I remember we went to Cleveland, he sold out the Brown Stadium. It was 40,000 people off the back end of Tickets to My Downfall. We had an activation earlier that day where his exhibit was in the Rock Hall of Fame. It was a crazy moment in time for me, but it was awesome. And he's one of the artists that I'm very proud to have worked with, and I really appreciate that time.
A lot of great success. I think this is amazing to hear that level of success, the A&R successes. You were talking about assistants coming into the business who want to go in and be whatever they want to be in a major label. Two questions, I guess. How does somebody become an A&R if they're not in the building? And how does somebody become an A&R if they are in the building?
A&R is one of the most coveted roles in the record label side of the music industry. Honestly, in the entire music industry, if you're not making music. So the entry point into one of those 10 majors is very difficult. I think one of the entry points that I've seen people use is just get your foot in the door. Just get the internship. No matter where, just get the internship, and then network like crazy. And I think that, it's something that I experienced because I'm a beneficiary of this. I went to college, my last career, or my last semester of college, I had to get an internship. And I went to Zeus Pacific, small private Christian college, like hour and a half east of LA. And all my friends were getting local internships. I was like, man, I gotta go work for a company where I'm the dumbest person in the room. Like I can't come from college and be the smart person that went to college and helping a local business. Like I wanna be a sponge. And so I saw a posting of Universal Music Group. I didn't know what it was. I showed up in classically my dad's gray suit that was too big for me, and I'm sitting in the
briefcase.
I didn't bring a briefcase, but I genuinely wore a suit that was too big for me that was gray. And I'm sitting in the lobby, and it's like the next kid is going to USC with holy jeans and Vans, and I'm like, oh Lord, I've overdressed. And I applied for an international marketing internship.
Okay.
And I went to school for marketing. I thought I wanted to go work in the NFL as a marketing director. I didn't know what that meant, but I got there, and I got it. And I was like, and at the time, labels were not paying for internships. They was like, oh, you're free work, cool. And I could work 7 days a week. And I'm giving the story because it expresses a little bit of that like old man, like I walked up the hill, you know, in the snow both ways barefoot, like, but I genuinely, like I drove an hour and a half outside of where I was living every single day to come to this free internship, to then go back to my school to work a night job so that I could do this internship. And I very quickly realized how much competition there was for an international marketing intern, because there was literally a queue of us every day. And some people were just like there to have fun. And I realized the pressure of like, I'm about to graduate, I gotta make money. And so I was like, I gotta outwork these people. And so one of the things that I did was I tried to network around the office and be as useful as possible.
Smart.
And I have a very fortunate foundation from a family life. My dad was like, become irreplaceable. And I was like, okay. And so I literally was talking to I was someone's coordinator or intern, but when they weren't using me, I was talking to the next person, like, hey, how can I help you? Mm-hmm. And then I would help that person, help that person, help that person. And I found a way to express like, well, what do you want to do? Like I had done my internship, I got hired as an assistant, like, what do you want to do? It's like, I want to make records. Like, I didn't know what that was. Like, I remember the first person I ever brought in was Tim Smith and Sonny Moore, Skrillex. And I had no idea what that meant. I just went to Cinespace one day and I was like, you guys are popping. Cinespace was a club in Hollywood. And I was like, you guys are popping, you should come in. And thank God I didn't sign Skrillex, because I would have for sure messed it up. But that was like the first thing. I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't connected. I was just someone going out trying to network. And he was someone that I feel like needed to understand, like he was already moving and he needed the team around him. I think he ended up signing with Chris Morris over at Atlantic or something. They did a great job. But it gave me that like taste of like, I think this is going to be successful.
I can do this, yeah.
I'm like noticing something that like, that could be successful. And then 3 seconds later, it was real successful. So it gave me a little bit of that taste.
Validation,
and
too.
then my entry point is I was still an assistant. Neil Jacobson had brought me on, and he had built this like really weird position where he was a manager for Robin Thicke, and his best friend from college, Jeff Basker, who ended up being one of the most prolific producers on planet Earth. But he was managing Jeff Basker and Robin Thicke. I was his day-to-day. And I started noticing that the building was doing a lot of remixes. So entry point for, I'm giving the context of this to understand like the entry point for A&R is not linear. It's not like, oh, I went to Berklee School of Music and I make music. And I was like, I want to help other people make music. And so I applied to be an A&R at a label, and now I'm an A&R at a label. That's not how it works at all. And for every one story, you'll hear 6 trillion stories where that's not the case. So I think it was like, get your foot in the door. I started realizing I want to make records. I brought in Sonny Moore, didn't sign him, but I was like, I see this, it's working. And then I was going out in a lot of clubs in Hollywood at the time where it was like Dre's and a bunch of dance music was hot. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, I'm hearing a lot of like, I'll also leave out names here, but one of the ways that in 2007, 8, that records would extend beyond the natural success of themselves was radio was dominant and you wanted spins. You wanted spins. And so they wanted drive time spins, and the overnights to increase the spin counts. And one of the ways that the label was doing it at the time was like, oh, we're gonna go to so-and-so DJ because they have a mix hour during drive time, or they're in the overnight, so we're gonna have them do the remix because they're gonna play their own remix of Lady Gaga or whoever they were remixing at the time, Black Eyed Peas, and then we'll get more spins. And I was like, yeah, but it's terrible. Like, these are not producers, they're DJs on a radio station. They're not producers at all. And I'm telling you, I'm going out in these clubs in Hollywood and these DJs are producers. Like these international guys, these Calvin Harrises, this whatever, they're producers. And they hadn't really put like Titanium for Gaga hadn't happened yet. Like no commercial success was coming out of DJs quite yet. And so we started doing remixes, and Neil had started talking to will.i.am, who he's really good friends with. He started working on the Black Eyed Peas project. I was an A&R coordinator. I didn't do anything. A&R coordinator is really in charge of like handling paperwork, calling a studio to book it. Some start to lean into that when they become an A&R coordinator. That's an entryway to becoming an A&R. Yeah. But at the time of the Black Eyed Peas records that were really successful, I had no part of it. I was admin person really. But what I was a part of is they were doing these remixes, and I said, hey, Neil, like, could I start doing like remix commissioning? He's like, cool, on spec. And so I was like, all right, let me reach out to some DJs and get some like DJs to do some stuff. And I started getting electronic DJs to do remixes on spec, where I was like, hey, I'm gonna give you a huge hit pop song, and I want you to remix it, and then if the pop star likes it, we'll release it, and I'll get you paid. And if they don't, we won't use it, which sucks because you did work for nothing, but at the same time, like, it's a foot in the door. And in dance music, none of them were getting commissioned. Like,
Sure.
Nobody was paying Afrojack $30,000 to do a remix at this time. It was like, man, this helps me get into pop music, and like, you're telling me Black Eyed Peas might hear my record? I'm down.
Amen.
And so I started doing that and started having success. I started recouping.
Were you one of the first doing this?
It was Dave Renee was really early on it. He's now manages Zed.
Yeah.
Myself and Neil, and like that's literally all I knew doing
Wow.
it. And so I started having success doing that and started leaning into it. And then I started, getting more vocal. Like I said with Neil, I was like, I want to do this, or I want to sign this, or I want to go set up this session. And he gave me the leeway to do that after he started to see that the passion was real, the success was happening, and he created that path for me. But I wanted to give a little bit of the insight of my story to becoming the A&R, because, again, it's not a linear path. So what I had mentioned earlier about the difference between an A&R who's in charge of artists and repertoire and a creative person around LA. You have a lot of people that are running around LA that's like, I'm an A&R for Bad Bunny. It's like, wow, that's crazy. Tell me about that. Well, I placed these 2 songs. Like, that's not an A&R for Bad Bunny. That's you placed 2 songs. And if you got paid, I'm so happy for you. But it is a way to become an A&R. You start doing that, you become irreplaceable to an artist. They either pull you into the management team, or they go to their label and they're like, this is my A&R, now hire them.
Real quick, what's placing a song? Just for those who don't know.
So the placing a song is when you're getting a bunch of demos from songwriters or producers or publishers or managers or artists direct. You could play songs from TikTok right now where you're like, hey, I love this record. Would you be open to another artist cutting it? And if it's not released, they take it to the artist and say, hey, here's a huge chorus. It just needs verses. Do you want to write on this? Sometimes it's 100% placement where it's like, hey, this is a perfect song. Do you want to cut this? And other times it's, hey, I'm friends with this new hot writer named Ink. I want to get you in with Ink. There's a guy named Dizzy who's out there every day crushing it in the world. Now he has management company and the A&R, and he's doing a million things. But he was out there in studios being like, you got to work with this person. And he would get them in there. And that mentality can really create success for you and really open paths to like you becoming an A&R at a record label. You start to prove value. The other thing that you start to feel like with, let's talk 10 major labels, is A&Rs do go to studio sessions a lot. They do go to shows a lot. They're out. They're supposed to be out. And when you start to see a Dizzy, or you start to see an individual who's out at all the hot shows, who's in all the studios, like, how are you here? Well, I don't really work with either team, but I'm trying to get my writer in here, and they respect me because I did this thing for them. You start to create a name for yourself that is hireable.
Yeah.
So I think that if you're trying to break into the music scene right now, it's like, come out to LA and don't, like, have fun, but also, like, it's a really hard business to get into. Everyone's trying to get into it, and if you're really trying to hustle into it, like, use what you got. And I think that, like, that's TikTok trying to find viral sounds that are working out, saying, hey, let me help you get a label deal, like, let me sign you or whatever. Then you come in, you help get them signed, you either become a A&R at that label, or maybe that label, you send them enough things where you get an inroad to one A&R, and they're like, yo, like, we're gonna do a sub-label venture with you.
Yeah.
That's how Darkroom started. Like, Darkroom started, which is a sub-label venture of Interscope with Billie Eilish, David, and a bunch of others, because he was doing a lot of things in the dance space, ironically, which is how I met this guy Justin, and he was working Griffin with me. He'd done stuff with Martin Garrix. He got this Darkroom venture that was supposed to develop talent. It's a great name, develop talent, and that's why I brought Billie to him. I was like, oh, she needs development, and obviously she blew up in 3 seconds with his hard work and the label's hard work. But he came in it from the perspective of like, we see you out there, you're in a niche, like, you're doing your thing, like, why don't we just give you a label? And he worked for it, but it's just, you got to use what you got. But this idea of like, I'm going to get a accounting job, and it's no different than going to get an A&R job, you're not getting it. You're not getting it. You better be a phenomenal speaker with unbelievable talent and a robust knowledge of music to even think that that might happen. And if you are not all three of those things, you better come in with a network. And that network can be built, like you can build that now.
Well, see, you know, the thing about what you're saying to me is very clear. And even if it was 10, 15 years ago, or however long it is, or it's today in 2025, which I don't think is as apparent,
Yeah,
you gotta work for it.
you got to work for
We're
it.
talking about Kai Cenat. Like, you better believe, I mean, you see it in real time. This guy's doing like subathons that are a month long. Like, that takes a lot of work. It does take a lot of people, for sure. But whether you're doing 90-minute drives on an internship getting no money, or you're this kid today like Kai Cenat,
Yeah.
streaming in this world, and like, you have to put in the work. And I think this like instant gratification thing might not be, it's not everybody, but you can't, this is a facade if you think that I'm gonna get on if I just do this one or two things. If I place the song, I'm in the A&R and they're gonna recognize me in the building. No, you gotta show up every single day.
Yeah.
That doesn't change because people see that. They're like, yeah, I wanna work with that person,
Yeah.
or that kid, because
Yeah.
that kid has it. Just like the artist as well.
I had a friend of mine, Carlos Cancela. He's at Interscope, and he's a great A&R. He's been an A&R. He's had a lot of success. He had this thing during the pandemic, and it was so inspiring to me. You know, everyone like tried to be mentally sharp during the pandemic. It's like, oh, I'm at home. I was working at Interscope. He was working at Interscope. We're at home. I was like, what are you doing? I'm like, first I got super fat, and then I was like, I'm gonna work out every day because I gained a bunch of pandemic weight. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna listen to podcasts. I was like, what have you been doing? He's like, I listen to an album a day. And I was like, oh, that's cool. He's like, not a commercial album a day. I'm going through genres, I'm going through years, I'm going through albums that won Album of the Year at the Grammys in 1977, but I'm listening mechanically to an album a day, and I'm trying to thoughtfully dissect why it was successful. And I was like, you're better than me. That's so cool to me because you're dedicating time to it. You love music, I love music. But you get complacent sometimes being like,
Sure.
yo, I'm listening to my jam that like I listen to every day at the gym because I love that song. And he was like, I do too, and I appreciate that, but I'm gonna go see like, why did Dr. Dre sample this 1960s song? And he just went through it. And when you think about an A&R person, it's like, that's also what makes it, like an obsession with music, an obsession to craft. A Kai Cenat or Mr. Beast who posted every day on YouTube for like 8 years before he had success. It's like, you hear these stories.
No, so it's not even that with him, but I mean, like, it's funny what he talks about YouTube. With YouTube, it's, I'll post when I know it's great.
Yeah.
He won't post, but he'll work so meticulously to get the thing to where it needs to be for YouTube. Before, maybe in the very beginning, his story is,
I may have got that wrong, but I know that he'd been working at it
regardless,
for
he's
years
working at
before.
it. Yeah, so he's a 14-year-old kid with like a group of 4, like, you know, they're just trying to figure out this, but it is 10, 12 hours a day trying to figure out how to best optimize on YouTube. To your point, regardless if it's every day or not, but yes.
Totally, and you look at the recent success of not recent, but the meteoric recent success of Kai Cenat.
It's a good way to put it.
That 30-day subathon. It's like, forget how much work that costs going into it. The dedication and sacrifice of being on camera for 30 days. The sacrifice of being on camera for 30 days, like, that is incredible. And he had an amazing guest because of it, because of where his exposure is at.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, dang, like, that's a really tough thing. You just gave 30 days of your life to the internet.
That's the Truman Show, and you knew you were on the Truman Show.
Yeah. It's fascinating to me, but I geek out about these marketing things, and I watch them. I'm like, that's it. And over the course of me being an A&R, I'd find assistants, I'd find coordinators, I'd find interns where they would start, and you're like, that's it, you got it, you got to keep going. And I feel like that was one of the other things I was really, I had a good radar about, as I would see individuals where I'm like, you're going to be wildly successful. And not like I was talking to them like big brother or I was their mentor. I was a peer at least. But like Mo Shalizi, I met him the first time. I was like, yup, I get it. And I had been at Interscope forever, and he had just started managing DJs for the first time. And I was already like, you have something that I don't, and I respect it and I get it, and you have a fierce dedication to breaking it. And I've watched him, go on to make his, to receive his flowers. And it's like, I would see people like that all the time, and I would try to really be a sponge. It's like, and I'm gonna take it to this I'm gonna take it to this podcast, I'm gonna take it to why we're sitting here. You started this thing to really talk to people and hear different perspectives. And I, as someone who'd worked at Interscope for 16 years with a robust knowledge of Interscope and labels, still learn things about labels through vessels like this where you hear people. And so I think that one of the things that you can do, whether you're an aspiring A&R at a record label or you're aspiring, artist or you're aspiring manager, is like, be a student of the game. Like, it is so classic, but it's like, be a student of the game.
That's a fact.
You have all these vessels to be able to consume. Like, how did they do it? It's a mystery. No, it's not. Go watch a podcast about it. They'll tell you all about how they did it. And one of the things that I always talk to with people that wanted to be an A&R that would come up underneath me, I was like, it's something I started learning towards I'd say the last 7 years of my career. I would hire an assistant. I say, you have 2 years. I'm going to fire you in 2 years, or you should quit in 2 years. Because in 2 years, you should know everything that I do and either understand how I do it and do it better,
right,
or understand a version that you don't want to do. So I'm ruling out something for you. But in 2 years, you should be sucking my network, you should be using it, and you should be making your decisions. And I found it really helpful for people to have that timeline of like, all right, I'm gonna go do it after 2 years. And it never needed to get to a firing place, but the sentiment of, I don't want you to sit here forever. It is selfishly better for me, for you to be successful so that we can work on some stuff in the future where I could be like, oh, that's my girl, that's my guy. Like they come up underneath me and now they manage so-and-so, or they look at this, or they run that label, or they do whatever. It's like, hey, I'm not calling it a favor that you owe me. I'm calling like, you're a peer, like, does this make sense for us? And it's like, cool or no. But it was more beneficial for me for people to learn that. And I think that podcasts like this give people such a expedited knowledge of like, here's a perspective from Lex on managing producers. Here's a perspective of Nick on what record labels are. This isn't the only way to break or the only way to operate or the only way to be in a record label, but I'm giving you the perspective of like, I did this, here's an example, learn how to do it better, do it different, or this is the landscape of it, know that going into it. But I think that these education tools that you can see on the internet, whether it's Kai Cenat and the Subathon, or it's Mr. Beast on YouTube, or it's this podcast, or it's a variety of other podcasts that are hyper-centralized on film or whatever, are such great resources for creative people to be like, okay, I just leveled up.
Yeah, for sure. Well, think about it. I mean, like, for me, the purpose of this, and I genuinely feel this way, but it's a stolen quote from Virgil. It's like, I'm paraphrasing the quote, but it's essentially, do the things that the 17-year-old me would have wanted to have in the world.
Yeah.
Right? So when I was growing up, I was just such a sponge to learning this business. I was just always, I liked the end product, but I was way more fascinated with like, how did this thing all come about? So for me with this podcast, it's like, okay, well, I have a pretty vast network. I have great relationships across the board, which I would consider great. And I think people will talk to me and they trust me in this space. I've got enough years in it. And I do see a lot of people talking about it online. And I think there are good individuals to listen to. Like Wendy Day is amazing. I love Wendy Day. I would love to have her on the podcast. We've talked about it. I think she does a great job with Rap Coalition. And there's a few other ones like that. But then there are some who don't have the credibility, who talk about the industry from maybe like a journalist perspective, maybe. And that's fine too. That's a necessary component because the business should be criticized from the outside. But I just had this, I think, I talk about this a lot, this blue ocean kind of like, I think this will work for talking to people like you and saying, well, let's get a more insider approach at a high level of how this business operates. It's not the end all be all, but it's one way that for sure can make sense to a lot of people. And I thought in the beginning it was more like for the kids who are 17 who are trying to figure it out. I come to find out Nick Groff, who's the SVP of Interscope, and was a GM at Geffen, is also watching. And Tyler's watching, and Gordon, and Natalie, and I'm like, oh wow, this is becoming a space. So I'm like, I say all that to say, like, I'm very thankful for the fact that you're here sitting down having this conversation, but not just because I asked you, but you're also,
I'm enthused by it.
you're a student of the game.
Yeah, I'm enthused by it. I want to learn. I want to share. I also want, like, I don't know if you want to get into this, but one of the other things that
Wherever you want to go.
one of the other things that I'm really excited about right now is artists owning their own audience and how that works within a record
I do want to
label.
get into that. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I don't know if you want to frame the question, but
Go.
one of the things that I'm obsessed with right now is audience acquisition, and it's going to be a buzzword that you hear at record labels with super fans, and it's been something that labels have talked about for the last couple years on super fans and fandom, but this idea of who actually is your super fan, how do you target them, and what's the value of said super fan? And we're in a transitional time where the music industry is getting much more algorithmic, and it's getting to a place where, you have your tour flyer that you post to your 150,000 fans on Instagram that only hits 10,000 of those fans because you don't own all of the data on the fan. You own the data within the algorithm of Instagram. You have your music that goes out to a variety of like your release radar or whatever, your super fans on Spotify, which they own the data to. You see these fans first platforms and whatever. But one of the interesting things about the record labels that is, I don't want to say a chink in the armor, but it's one of the things that they need to figure out right now, which is labels had a chokehold on radio 10 years ago. They had a workforce around the United States of America to work a song to top 40 in all the different markets. As radio has diminished in power, it's still very, very relevant, but it is diminished in power of breaking, and it's more reflective of what's broken.
Right.
Spotify, Apple, Pandora, Amazon, YouTube, DSPs have become that, and labels had a stranglehold on DSPs. That stranglehold was a game of leverage. We have a Kendrick Lamar song coming, or we have a Weeknd song coming, and also we have a Gracie Abrams song coming, or also we have a, Post Malone song coming, or whatever. He's massive, but we have leverage to go to the DSPs and say, hey, talk to us, work with us, because we have this big thing, but we also have this thing that's important to us that we're pouring money into, and because we're pouring money into it, and we've been successful in the past, you should weight our opinion more. And what's happening now is all the DSPs are moving towards an algorithmic model. So if they move towards an algorithmic model, where is that chokehold from the label's perspective on the success of a record? And right now it's in the volume of workforce, which will keep labels safe for a very, very long time, and they'll pivot and they'll mold and they'll change, just like they have from the Napster days to where they're at now. But one of the things that's really empowering for an artist right now is understanding you're not selling the product of your song. Your song is a catalyst moment. You're selling the product of who you are.
Right.
Storytelling. And people talk about storytelling all the time, but there was an artist that I talked to yesterday, and she has a song that has 12 million impressions in the last 24 hours. And it is just bonkers out of here. And her entire page and social feed is focused on just her as a person, not as an artist.
Who's the artist?
I don't want to say right now, but it's an artist that's having a big moment. In the moment, she's having the song break, and I'm watching some of the artists in the ecosystem of labels where the labels are focused so much on the success of a song and not enough on the success of the artist after that moment.
Oh my God.
And it's becoming really difficult because, and this is where artists
That was
and their managers,
where my initial question comes from, right?
this is where artists and their managers need to have a focus on what's important to us. There's a
Let me stop you there,
Yeah.
because what I want to read is the company bio at Rare Society, because I think it touches very
Yeah.
well with what
Oh,
the
gosh.
ethos is here.
I put this on for a trademark issue and we got it. But yeah.
Well, here it is. I mean, but it speaks volumes to what you're talking about. So at Rare Society, we are an art-first, fan-focused management company. We believe that art is the foundation of every artist's career. It must be protected, valued, and amplified. Equally essential is the growth of an artist's fan base and network, as these are the driving forces behind long-term success. As the industry shifts toward an algorithmic-driven model for discovery and consumption, An artist's ability to build meaningful connections with fans is more critical than ever. Our mission is to equip artists with the tools, strategies, and support needed to foster deep fan relationships, expand their reach, and maximize their creative and commercial potential. That's the bio of Rare Society.
Rare Society.
It speaks to what you're saying right now, where it's very much a management. I think a lot of the power has gone to the management companies, and you're seeing them pop up more and more from people who've been at the record labels and now starting management companies like, oh my God, what's her name? From Capitol. She just started a management company.
Oh, did she, Julie?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
To my understanding, that she just started a
Not
management
surprising.
company.
I don't want to say a while, but yeah, I didn't know that.
Because who was it that told me, I can't remember who it was that told me, but she was in a bidding war for an artist. And okay, I do remember now who told me, but I don't want to say who it was. But she was in a bidding war with Range and another company for this artist. She didn't land this artist. Somebody else did. But she just started one. So, and I think it's because, to what you're saying, the management companies and the artists are really starting to identify that if you understand the fan, who the fan is, and how to bring that fan into the ecosystem with the top of funnel, and you can bring them to the bottom of the funnel, you are not creating tons of value for that artist. Because it's not just about the song, it's about this whole story that you're telling, right? To your point, what's the story that you're telling? And everybody is talking about that, but that's what marketing is.
Totally. This is a pinch point of frustration between artist, manager, and label. This is definitely one of them. I talked from the perspective of an A&R earlier in this conversation.
Yes.
Where it's like, I'm with you, you're with me, we're making records, whatever. But the A&R, while they play a role in marketing because they're telling the building about the artist, they are not the marketer.
Right.
They are not the international marketer. They are not they deal with them, they talk to them, they're a team member with them, but they are not that person. That person, one of the oh man, this is such a generalization. One of the gaping holes in record labels right now is creative ideation. Because you have marketing directors who were that, and they were supposed to be these like robust creative nucleuses within a record label, but they also have this mechanical role of disseminating information at volume.
Yeah.
And
that's tough when you've got so many
tough
artists.
when you have so many artists and when you have so many things that an artist is doing.
Yeah.
We have this tour, we have this bullet point, we have this thing happening, we have this cover of this, we have this editorial piece, we have SNL, we have this, whatever. So your marketing director is like Tank from The Matrix, the movie The Matrix. It's like knows what's happening in every sector of the business, and they're trying to disseminate information all the time.
Yeah.
The volume of workflow that they have to deal with prohibits them from sometimes just being creative and sitting down, listening to an album, doing whatever you need to do to get in the moment and saying, I vibe with this. What if we did this thing? And having that breath of creativity to just dive into like creative ideation. That creative ideation is often felt closely and warmly and intensely through the eyes of management and the artist because they read every comment. I read every comment.
Yeah.
I read everything that my artist allows me to read. When a problem is arising, I'm seeing it pop up on comments. When a song is not connecting, I'm seeing it. When a song is connecting, I'm seeing it. When there's a trend connecting, I'm seeing it, and I'm obsessing about it. And I'm obsessing about who the fans are. Why are they fans? What have you given them? And it's such a transactional thing. And labels are trying to sell a product. And I think it's just been one of these things that I've realized a year removed from Interscope, where I'm just on the management side, and you had these I feel like it became a really big buzzword during the Taylor Swift tour. I feel like Taylor Swift started to dominate the world 2 years ago on this world tour, whatever it was, 3 years ago, and labels were like super fans. We got to talk about super fans.
Yeah.
And now they're building platforms to build super fans. But I will challenge anybody that is a creative person who has any position of power to go to their label and say, who's our super fans? Oh, you got a lot of them. No.
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
I want to know our super fans in Cleveland, Ohio. Oh, you got so many. No. Who? Mm-hmm. Like, well, we know them. We have them because we do, we do the fans first thing, or we do the whatever thing. It's like, no. I want to know who they are. Because now imagine how beneficial it would be for my artist to walk up to their superfan and recognize them and say, yo, John Smith from Cleveland, Ohio. Yeah, I love you. Thank you for following me since 2012. Do you want to come backstage? You want to be on stage? You want to do whatever? Like, please, I just want to thank you. That moment, the impact of that moment by that individual would be a ripple effect for fandom.
Well,
and I think Taylor Swift is doing this really well.
The best, in my opinion, is Fred again.
Fred again is doing this phenomenally well. And you're starting to see the artists that do this really well, but the labels are having a difficult time replicating that because they're dealing with mass consumer knowledge and they're dealing with all this data from these platforms. But and I'm not even, this is not a venomous comment. I don't know if they have the time to isolate, like, how do we speak to this one super fan in Milwaukee? How do we speak to this one super fan in Birmingham?
Well, I think to the point of that is a major record label is, the goal is to monetize half of a catalog, the records, to your point.
Yeah.
These are multi-billion-dollar businesses. To shift the thinking of a multi-billion-dollar business to this other thing here will take time.
Yeah.
You can't do that overnight. So it's not, I don't think it's venomous.
I think it's venomous.
Yeah, venomous. Yeah, at all.
But I do feel it from the perspective of a manager because I'm focused on it all the time, and I do activations with my clients where it's like, one of the things that I'm doing right now, I have this DJ that I manage named Bunt. We went crazy viral on TikTok. He's done 400 million streams and 50,000 tickets this last year. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
We have a show next week. And I don't know if this is going to air, but we have a show March 22nd in Mexico City. It's his first hard ticket show ever, and it's a sold-out stadium in Mexico. It's our first hard ticket show in Mexico ever, and it's a stadium show. And
for one of the artists that you manage.
Yeah.
Congrats.
And it's awesome.
Congrats.
And again, I don't know when this is there, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be after next week.
It will be.
We are planning a pop-up where we are taking literal kids' chalk and drawing a soccer field in the middle of this park in Mexico that's very famous. And we're setting up like the vision for it was like and one street ball, but with soccer and trash cans as the goals. And we're telling the fans like, hey, if you like soccer, no pressure, I'm gonna be at this park, come play with me.
Oh my God.
And people are gonna show up. And by the way,
of course,
thousands of people will show
Mexico.
up.
Yeah,
and
I mean, that's a great
we are
activation.
not taking from them,
Yeah.
and they are not taking from us.
Yeah.
We are enjoying something together.
Yeah, that's great.
So one of the big things for me is like, how do you bridge that gap with fandom? You find common experiences where you guys both share passion for the same thing. And right now, there's a lot of give and take in music. Like, I'm giving you my data so that you could market me music more effectively, or I'm giving you this fans first because you've given me your streaming volume over the course of the last year. And I have such a problem with that, where it's like, build the bridge between fans, between commonality, and watch how it strengthens them over the course of time. That long tangent to say with record labels and consumption, the model is changing for DSPs into an algorithmic world.
Yeah.
And so right now, if you manage an artist and they post, I think I gave you this example at lunch, if they post a picture of a unicorn jumping over a rainbow with a leprechaun and a pot of gold at the end of it, and it's a real photo, you somehow picture the most imaginary thing of all time, and you post this real photo to your Instagram, you're like, this is a Time magazine photo of the year moment, and you post it and it gets 2 likes. There's no one to call it Instagram. You can't be like, manager, you need to call Instagram to make this like on the famous like thing. Mm-hmm. You can go farm it out and pay for clicks, or you can go find other people that could try to trick audiences to watch it, but there's no single individual to call to make you have a lot of likes from Instagram. Spotify is moving towards that model, which is daunting if you're relying on playlisting breaking you. But if you're relying on your army of fans showing up to break you, and you've been encouraging the growth of that, and you've been building the growth of that, and you've been building the connection with your fans, they will show up and time again break you. And I believe that's why we're in this era of watching so many K-pop groups break, because they focus on the army first, and then they come to market with the music. And it is such an antithesis to the thinking of the Western culture, where it's music catalyst, then build army.
Yeah.
Sometimes the labels are music catalyst, how do we juice this song and all the versions we could possibly do for this one song until it's dead, and we've made all of our money back.
Yeah.
And there's a couple artists in market right now with songs on today's top hits that are in crazy danger of this happening to them, and they're gonna blink. And they've played all the radio shows, they've done all the soft ticket plays, they grabbed a couple bags for $1 million, and they're gonna blink. And next year they're gonna go book their hard ticket tour, and they're gonna be like,
Where are you?
we don't have fans.
Yeah.
But the song has fans. The brand is the song. How do we grab that song? It's
Yeah.
like, it's too late.
Yeah.
You missed it. It's gone. That ship has sailed.
What are some of the tools that you're using to connect the fans to the artists, to identify who exactly are these people?
So one of the platforms that I'm using a lot right now is called Lalo, and it's a it's like a CRM platform that also combines Instagram and phone numbers and all that, and it's pretty trivial, to be honest. And to note, diss towards Lalo, but there's like Lalo, there's Seated, there's a couple platforms, there's Community that's been around for a really long time to collect phone numbers. It's less about the platform and it's about how you use it. Like, there's platforms that could say, give me your data so that we can sell to you in the future. Mm-hmm. That's cool. But it's like, give me your data so I could tell you about something that nobody else knows about if you're a fan. That's a different way, because you're saying, if you give me something, I want to return with something special for you. Mm-hmm. And Spotify did this as a platform. They do this as a platform with Spotify fans first all the time, and it's awesome. If you listen to this artist all the time, we're going to give you a pre-sale password for their tour. You can buy it first. You can guarantee a ticket. It's a reward for your listenership. But I don't think artists do it enough, where it's like, how do we lean into that? So a lot of times you'll see people use these platforms like, hey, I have a new tour. Sign up for my artist pre-sale. Give me your data so I can sell more tickets next time.
It's very
so transactional.
Yeah.
And what I was saying about the soccer pop-up that we're going to do, and then this is going to air, and I'm going to be like, oh, let's see, we did it, is we're just hitting people that have signed up for us in the past with other activations that we've done. We've actually done free pop-ups in Mexico where we said, hey, we're coming to play for free. Show up. Come through. Roll through. It cost us thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars to do those. And it was worth it to us because we're like, why don't we give them something first? We see that this is going to be big territory for us based on our data. We could go wash a hard ticket show for 2,000 cap right now, or we could spend the next year doing free shows and doing pop-ups and giving back to the fans for streaming, spending our own money, and see what happens. Want to know what happened? We sold out a stadium. And it's blowing everyone's mind right now. But it wasn't an accident. We did this 18 months ago on purpose.
Yeah.
But we've been trying to figure out ways. And by the way, there's so many other use case studies. Like, we're learning so much from Fredigan. I told you I'm a sponge for other people. We're doing a lot of things that Fredigan was doing too.
Like what?
He just got so big that it became hard for him to do it again. Like, he played a Chinese restaurant for a bunch of his friends in LA, and it was like 300 people. Well, now he's gotten so big that if he did that, there's actually a danger to the public because of how many people that would show up. So he has to organize his pop-ups a little bit differently. We're in that sweet spot with Bunt where we're getting thousands of people that are showing up, so we got to be a little bit smarter about how we do pop-ups now. Mm-hmm. But it's this aspect of like, how do we give things away? Like, I love Skrillex right now. It's a hard thing to create. It's a hard thing to create repeat listenability, but he's giving away music. He's out of his deal. He's independent now. He's like, give me your email. I'm just going to send you the demos I'm working on today. And it's like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because now you've said there's no barrier. You owe me nothing. I'm not saying give me your email so that I can make more money off you. He will be able to do that in the future. But he's saying, I genuinely, if you want it, I want to give it to you. I don't want you to pay for it anymore. Here it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. I don't know if that's scalable, because say he puts out a demo that's really successful, he'll have to upload it later for it to be mass market successful. But at the same time, this idea of like, you're part of the process. You tell me.
Well, I mean, that is skill right there, in my opinion, because now you're building a stronger connection with the fans. And if you are not somebody that has ever signed up to say, buy a ticket because you can't afford it, well, I can afford to sign up for this. I'm a huge fan of you, Skrillex.
Yeah.
But now I can't afford to go to your show because the ticket costs $150, $200, but I can give you my email because I love your music, and now you're going to send me the demo?
Yeah.
That's a level of connection that is just way beyond, right? And so now you're bringing in more people. And more people, and what you do with that is really just kind of comes up to whatever the management team and the artist wants to do. You can play soccer with the fans,
But this is what labels are going to start learning how to do. They're going to start learning how to sell the artist instead of the product, and it needs to happen. And in the pop world, it's happening faster. In the country world, it's still very transactional. You know, I think I brought up the Virgil example of, like, I think it's the candle or the can in the room. It looks like trash if it's next to trash, and it looks like art if it's in front of a white cyc and looks like a museum.
Yeah.
I use Red Bull as an example all the time. Like, there was a moment in Red Bull history where they were focused on the can. It was skinny, it was beautiful, and it was simple, and they probably got some crazy designer to do it. And then Sprite was doing the ASMR with the sweat dripping down, and you know that there was someone in a Red Bull meeting that was like, oh, let's take a beautiful picture, just like Sprite did. We'll play with ASMR. And some person in that meeting was like, nah, fuck that. Let's send someone into space with a Red Bull suit. And it probably cost $1 million. And they're like, well, like a viral moment, like holding a Red Bull, like drink Red Bull because I'm in space. Nope, just throw them into space because it represents what it makes you feel like. You have wings, you're crazy, you just want to go do something with energy. And it was one of the things, many things, that Red Bull has done right to market the product. Labels need to start marketing the artist because the value of an algorithmic world is the fan base. And if they're only marketing the song, they may make their transactional, we paid you $3 million to sign here, so we recouped our investment off that one song. But the long-term value of that artist will be diminished by your focus on monetizing and branding the singular song instead of the artist.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing what you know now, being on the management side to that point, a label comes around because your artist not signed?
Signed to Sony.
Okay, so signed to Sony. So what makes sense, what kind of deal makes sense to you to work with a major label? You know I had to ask.
No, I know. How do I want to answer this? I find myself constantly in friction with the label because I feel like...
You don't say.
I know.
You don't say.
I feel like myself, but it also comes from the perspective of, like, remember I said this is my playbook, rip it up and do it better. Well, I'm me, so this is my playbook. So, like, you're the label and I have done your job before. This is how I want to roll out my artist.
Yeah.
And I want you to be a passenger in the car, not the driver.
Difficult for you to say that to somebody on the other side?
Yeah, it's very difficult. But it also, sometimes friction is created where I talk about creative ideas can come from anybody at any age, in any walk of life. Someone can have a brilliant creative idea. That is not something you need a resume for. That is just something that needs to come out of someone's brain. Mechanical ideas come from experience. And sometimes I have fights with the label where it's like, you can't do this because we can't do that on Spotify, or we can't swap the mix, or we can't do whatever. I'm like, you're 100% wrong.
You're the wrong guy.
Because I've done it before.
Yeah.
So it becomes one of those things where my friction sometimes comes from a place of, like,
it's just frustration.
Experience.
But it's the frustration.
It's like, I've actually done this before. I actually know how to do your job. It doesn't mean I'm going to come up with all the creative ideas. You could totally come up with those. Doesn't mean I know how to manage your budget. I don't know where you're prioritizing your spend right now. You might have another project I don't even know about that you need to spend money on this quarter, and that's why you're reducing the bunt spend on X, Y, and Z. That's fair. I'm not running your business. I'm running the bunt business. But we're in constant friction of that. At the same time, David Massey's over there, who I know you experienced it with, and he's
Arista. Okay.
And I love Massey.
Who's great? Massey's great.
Phenomenal.
Massey's
He's an artist.
Yeah.
He's a champion for artists.
Yeah, for
and I
sure.
have a great relationship with him. So when there's real friction that we need to really work through, we try to work through it. But the deal that makes sense for me...
And Massey listens.
He does.
He'll listen to the managers because he understands how close the relationship is with manager and artist. He really gets it.
He does. So I think that the relationship that makes sense for me from an artist perspective to a label's perspective, and I'm strictly speaking of me, is I eventually want to build a team around my artist. And if a record label helps me do that, cool. We could talk about it. We could talk about what the split looks like, what the separation of work looks like, and it needs to be fair. If I am expecting the label to do everything, then it makes sense that they have a majority share. I know labels and artists have this, like, push and pull of, like, how dare labels take 80% of the master? Like, that's crazy. I want a distribution deal, or I want a profit split, or I want a whatever. You can have all those things. You don't have to sign a record deal. Build leverage and then do that. If you want to sign a traditional record deal, they're putting a lot of risk on the table monetarily. They're putting a lot of risk on the table with workforce and time spent on the project. And so they're protecting their risk by having a certain weighted position on a lot of different artists. And they'll lose money, they'll lose their shirt on 10 artists, and they'll make a fortune on 3 artists. And that's how a record label functions. So for me right now, I'm in a place where
Sorry, hold that thought, because I think I'd love to ask you, I appreciate that thinking, it's not said enough.
Yeah.
And that's important to know that that's how the record labels operate.
Yeah.
They do put up a lot of capital if it's, especially if you don't have leverage.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course the terms are going to be more favorable to the record label. You hear this term from certain artists say, doing a deal with a record label is like taking a bad loan.
Yeah.
Do you agree or disagree?
Jelly Roll just went on a rant about this, and he is so right. It's not a bad loan. It's just it's not. How do I word this? It's artists need to understand what they're getting into. They need to understand how recoupability works. It doesn't work. I made $1. The label takes 80%. I take 20%. I got 20 cents. No, you're recouping out of your 20 cents. So you're recouping your investment off of that really small share. So if the label gave you $2 million, they gave you $1 million in your pocket, they gave you a $500,000 recording fund and a $500,000 guaranteed marketing spend on the first album cycle, which wouldn't be a massive deal from a major perspective, but it would be a decent deal. Not decent in terms of terms, but it would be a decent risk investment from an artist's perspective. If they gave you that deal, you're recouping a lot of that upfront capital through your 20% share while they're taking 80% off the top.
Why?
And artists don't understand that recoupability.
Why?
They think, I made $2 million, so the label recouped their $2 million. That's how it works.
Yeah.
No. The label took the risk, and they have the workforce, and they have the exhaustion of their network, and they have all of the effort that they put into breaking your record. And for that, they have said, we would like to do a deal. We're going to take 80%. And this is something where it's like, oh, this is malicious thinking. Like Jelly Roll, really had a certain opinion about it. I don't know that I personally have the same opinion. I respect his, but my thing was like, just you need to know what you're going into, because the other side of it is, as an artist, you don't have to sign a record deal. You don't have to sign the record deal that was presented to you. You don't ever have to sign a deal. Should you choose to take a $2 million check, you need to know where you sit in that leverage position. And if you're not in a leverage position to change the terms, don't take the check. Or I've actually seen artists do this where they have a really smart manager, they're making money on touring, and they're like, look, I don't want any money in my pocket. I don't need it. I need you guys to work my records. And also, I don't need that big of an A&R fund. Don't give that to me. I don't need that either. And also, the marketing fund should be discretionary. And they almost push back on the term saying, creatively, we like the landscape of this label. We think you guys are awesome. We think you have leverage. We think you get me. But I don't want that debt on my head. I want to get my royalties faster. And I want to get to a place where actually I want a reversion of my copyrights in 7 years. I want a reversion of my copyrights in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever you're able to negotiate. So I don't want your upfront money. I want to recoup fast. And then I want my masters back as my retirement plan in 5 years. Those seasoned artists are the ones that are doing the deals that make sense for themselves. There's a lot of naive artists that come in with their friendager that get, hey, $3 million check. And they're like, this is rad. I just made $3 million. I got $1 million in my pocket. No, you didn't. You live in California. First off, you're going to take 35% right off the top, 20% for a manager. You're going to take 5% for a lawyer. You're going to take, I guess you'll take 25%. You're not paying an agent for this. You're going to take 25% right off the top. Now you're at $750,000. Well, you're in a high tax bracket if you live in California, so take half of that. That's how much money you just made. So buy a house, put a down payment on a house. You're not even buying a house in California for that. You're going to put a down payment on a house, $1 million down payment on a house. Now you're paying your mortgage. Well, now you're also not receiving any royalties on that music. So I hope you have touring income or merchandising income or publishing income coming in, because that well will dry out. And you're not out of that deal when it dries out. And you can't go back to them and say, I don't have any more money, but I need to make more records, so can you guys give me more money? Like if you're doing moderately successful, they might. it'll go against your recoupability, so you're going to owe them again for it. But artists need to understand what they're walking into. And I'm not saying the deal is a bad deal. There's plenty of bad deals. But a major deal is a certain format. And so I think that it's just really important for artists to understand, like, you got to understand what you're signing.
You've seen artists at the label get back their royalty?
I've seen,
like, make the money, like they get a quarterly check.
I mean, I've been a part of some artists that have done very, very well.
Yeah.
So they've made back end.
Because you never hear that. You rarely hear that the people that will make back end. It's like it's always kind of going cross into the next album and whatnot.
Well, that's also, I mean, that would be a very intense negotiation discussion for this podcast. But you can create pockets that are not crossed with other pockets. So you can have an album that's not crossed with your next album, so the recoupability is not crossed. And this is where it's like, understand what you're signing.
Yeah.
Have a seasoned manager, have a seasoned lawyer. Understand what you're doing. So that 2 years into success, you're like, yo, where's my royalty check? Well, it's actually crossed with the next album, or it's actually crossed with this other thing that we did, and that thing is not recouped at all. But you did recoup this one, but now they're trying to recoup the investment on that other thing that we did. Remember how we borrowed that money for that live stream? Yeah, they're making this crossed with what we were doing. So you really have to understand the deal terms. And I think any deal makes sense for an artist as long as you understand it and you're operating as such. So if you're saying, I made my check from the label, I'm a kickback, I don't really want to go on tour, it's not my thing. And there's some artists that don't want to tour.
For sure.
And it's like, well, where do you think money is going to come in from in a second? Because you're going to run out of that money. So you better be setting up your touring. You better be setting up your audience, your fan base. So I just think that, like, major labels get a really bad rap for some of these deals, but it's like, these deals are 50-page documents. Like, read it. Like, talk to your lawyer. If you don't understand it, ask the question.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand paragraph B. Can you walk it through? By the way, ChatGPT, welcome to the gift of God. Put it in ChatGPT and say, write this as if I don't know what I'm talking about. What are they asking for?
Yeah.
It'll spit it out for you.
For sure.
So I think the artists need to educate themselves a little bit more when they go into these deals.
Can you just, I want to get a little bit more granular to that royalty rate, right? So let's say you're doing a $2 million deal. It's an 80-20, 80 for the label, 20 for the artist. You're not recouping on the full amount of the 2 million from, like, the 100%. You're recouping from the 20 that you have. So your 2 million, in order for you to recoup, has to recoup 5x.
Yeah.
So now that deal has to do 10 million?
Yeah.
Why is it just the 20?
The label assesses risk. So the label is taking the 80% off the top. And this is where it's like, is it right? Is it not right? I don't know. It's the format. It's the format that they chose. Label is also, we talked about it earlier. How many people is the label signed? 60. So there's 60 moments where the label said, here's a check. There's 60 moments where they said, hey, marketing director, I know you have that big priority, but now here's 7 other artists that maybe one day might be. It's a time suck for you. So you're not going to have that. Remember I said one of the biggest holes in a lot of labels is creative ideation. It's like, you don't have time for that because you're doing these other things. So labels are factoring in that. It's like when you're doing a really, really, really intense, like, budget on a tour. Like, you're like, oh, well, the tour bus costs this, and our flights cost that, and our tour manager costs this, and it's whatever. And then you start touring for a few years, and you're like, how much does the insurance for that one show cost if you amortize it from our premium? $7. We'll put that on the budget. How much does this? And you start to understand, like, there's so many different line items that are added up on top of those basic salaries and stuff. Labels are doing the same thing. So labels are like, how much does our workforce cost? When you look at the lifestyle of a marketing director at a major record label, they're making money. They're making good money. You have to pay for that. So if you're a record label, you have a ton of money in overhead, in salaries, in time spent. So that's why labels are justifying, we're taking this money off the top because the risk versus reward is very high. It is more likely that out of our 60 artists that are signed, 50 of them are going to end up in an unrecouped space in the next 10 years. It is likely that that is going to happen. So for that, we're going to protect our wins by taking this amount of money. I'm not justifying it, but I'm saying that's why. That's what they're doing.
In an era where independent artists have much more control, like you said, what is the role of the manager in 2025?
Manager manages all operations for an artist. So an artist is going to have a record label regardless of if they sign. And what I mean by that is they're going to have someone who is responsible for helping distribute the song. That could be TuneCore, but someone is literally manually uploading it, putting in metadata, getting lyric sheets, negotiating the deals for the producers, the writers, whatever. They have the role and responsibility of helping distribute music. So the manager is in charge of that person, whether it's Insular and they're doing it, or the artist is doing it, or they get a distributor. They're managing that connection. They're managing their connection with your agency. Your agency could, for an artist, be just touring. Your agency could be William Morris or CAA or Wasserman or UTA or even subagents, where they also have acting. They have acting agents within that agency, or they have literary or the comedic agents. And if your artist is like, oh, I actually want to do, like, I still think Louis Capaldi should do a comedy tour. I would buy a ticket.
Yeah,
for
I would.
Like, I think he's hilarious.
He's great.
And he actually made a post about this the other day, where like people are more upset that I haven't been funny online than released music. It's like, no, I want your music too, but also like, please do a comedy tour, or at least a Netflix special. But you have an agency that can do all of these things for you, build a show, whatever. Your manager is in charge of that. So even your agent that says, hey, I want to go run a tour in North America because we need tickets to North America, your manager ultimately with the artist is like, I don't want to tour those markets yet. I actually want to separate it. Let's do A markets and then B markets. And it's a ping back and forth between the agent. So your manager is managing those operations. Your manager is managing the way you present yourself on social media, whether they're saying, tell me what you're doing, or giving you feedback. I have a developing artist or I'm developing an artist who's in the country space that I just signed, and it's very, very, very early, but her voice is nuts. And I talk to her every day about social media strategies. And I'm like, here, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm telling you what's worked and what I'm witnessing. Just here's options. Mm-hmm. If you say, I don't like any of those options, I'm going to do my own thing, cool. I'm just trying to educate you through the process from my experience. And once we start to build that out, we're going to build out the music, we're going to do whatever. But I'm helping her with even social media, even though I'm not even posting for her. But the manager is the president of operations for the CEO, which is the artist. Artist is up here, president of operations is the manager. You have your president of distribution, which could be a record label. You have your president of copyright, which could be your publisher. You have your president of touring, which could be your agent. You have your president of business affairs, which could be your lawyer. But your manager is managing all of those operations as you scale. And so you really want your manager being super communicative. You want your manager to be someone who knows a little bit about all those things so they can check people. And you want your manager to be your partner in how you vocalize your desire to do these things, whether it's building repertoire or it's going on tour or it's booking a comedy tour. It's like you're trying to get it done. Your manager also has to be the voice of reason to an artist, which is what sometimes causes friction with an artist and a manager, because it's very easy for someone to say, we can't do that. And then you go and articulate, we can't do that to your artist. But your artist is going to say, why? Like, we can't do that because of X, Y, and Z. Actually, I didn't like their reasons. I'm going to press them a little bit. Let me press them. They said that we only got an offer for $30,000 for that show. You're right. Why? We did this many tickets at this dollar amount. We've done this much growth since. We should be getting $50,000 for that show. You go back, the agent's like, we're never going to get $50,000. This just happened to me today, and I passed on the deal. We're never going to get that kind of money for this show. I was like, cool, pass. And they're like, well, they offered that kind of money for the show. I was like, I don't want it, pass. And it's
wait, they came back and said they gave $50,000.
Then I was just, I mean, it wasn't that dollar amount, but they came up drastically, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to do it. And I didn't want to do it because I didn't want it to devalue a hard ticket show that we're announcing in that market a little bit later.
Okay.
But your manager is the one dealing with the agent, because the agent was like, this transaction happened. Do you want to do it? And it's the discerning decision of the manager and the artist. And if you have a good agent, they're in that conversation too.
For sure.
But your manager is a linchpin between all of these conversations. So if you're an independent artist, your manager is doing everything I just mentioned themselves. And it's tough, but at the same time, you almost want to bring on people. Like this is where this is some artist who became very successful in the pop sector with big hits and big albums, kind of failed a little bit in the sense that they made a lot of money, they owned their copyright, but they didn't see the value of building a team. If you want to be the independent artist and you want to contain that independence, but you also aspire to be a global presence, then you need to be spending money building a reputation in global markets, which means you need boots on the ground to help you with publicity or digital or marketing or whatever. And if you're like, oh, well, now we're making 100% of our copyright revenue, this is so sick, now we're just going to pocket it all, I'm going to commission my thing, and I want to tour in, France one day, it's like, well, you didn't actually do anything in France one day. You're really big in America, but you didn't make any sort of effort to invest in these other markets. What I said earlier with Bunt, we spent tens of thousands of dollars doing free pop-ups in Mexico so that we could sell at a stadium in Mexico. We invested in that market. And that wasn't even the record label, but we saw the opportunity to say, hey, we have all this income, but instead of just pocketing it, can we reinvest it to make it 10 times bigger? And I think that that's what artists need to be thinking about when they're building their team. If they're like, I fiercely want to stay independent, power to you. Your choice, do it. Awesome. Build a team. Like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, then you got to build a company. And if you want to be an entrepreneur that does all these parts, and this happens with artists sometimes when they micromanage, I want to do all of it. Okay, well, that means you're not in the studio today. Okay, that means you're not planning your next photo shoot. That means you're not planning what you're going to wear for this because you're spending too much time micromanaging all the parts. And if you start to find yourself in that position, you need to take a hard look at, do I have trust issues that I need to step back from and I do have the right team? Or, damn, do I have the right team? Like, you really need to assess what gives you more creative freedom to be successful.
You said partnership. Very much an entrepreneurial role, the manager.
Yeah.
There's been a bit of a conversation online and post that I had with Lex with the 50-50 partnership. To me, it's not so much about the 50-50, it's more so the partnership, equity in the business. What's your take on that?
Lex was really articulate in why he thinks it should be a 50-50 partnership. I don't share the same opinion, but I really respect what Lex has done. It becomes difficult when you say 50-50 partnership because there's a heavier investment sometimes with a touring artist. So let's say we're 50-50 and let's use broad numbers. So you have an artist that's really successful and you're starting to get $100,000 offers in certain markets. You get a $100,000 offer in New York to do a show. Manager says, 50-50 partners, I made 50 grand. Cool. Artist says, I got to bring in production now. I'm like, well, that's your problem. That's your business. Like, I'm here for you. I got you this place. We're at 100 grand. So sick. You do your own production, whatever. So they do their production. They spend $20,000 on videos and lights. Cool. There's 20 grand off the artist side. Well, now the artist only has 30 grand, but they have a band. And they got to pay everyone between $500 to $1,500 a day. And there's a day to fly in, there's a rehearsal day, and then there's the show. And you start to see that artist side whittle real quick. So I don't think it's fair sometimes when you have an artist say, I want to take this hard line. Now, Lex may not have specified like, oh, no, I'll stand behind production costs, but once we get to that final profit line, then it's 50-50. And that's fair. I can understand why he says that. But I think that there's also models where you take 20%, you only stand behind certain costs, and you still make a good chunk of money as an artist or as a manager who's put a lot of time equity into an artist and grown them from the ground up.
From an equity standpoint, not commission.
From a commission standpoint.
Okay.
I believe in an equity position when you're creating a product together from the ground up. And I don't mean the artist's IP. I mean, you start, I've had conversations with one of my people about starting a music festival. But I want to start it with you. I'm going to invest my own money. I'm going to invest my own time. We're going to bring in outside talent. We're going to build it. We're going to do it ourselves. And I want to be partners with you.
Right.
And I've seen Miles Shear do this with Kygo, and I think it's awesome. I think
What
Palm Tree Festival is really smart. I think it's really smart. And it's modeled after Margaritaville, who they were both very good friends with before Jimmy passed. But Margaritaville built an atmosphere. And so it's not Kygo Festival, it's Palm Tree Festival. It's built off of an atmosphere. It's really smart. And so I don't know what their split between them is, but they are partners. And they constantly online and in press announce the partnership between Miles Shear and Kygo in creating X property. Stuffed puffs with Moshe Leezy and Marshmallow. Like, that's a really methodical partnership. It's not marshmallows. It's a new product line that they've built off the back end of what they've built together. I don't know what their profit split is, but that would make sense to me to say, hey, let's be participants in this, let's be equity participants in this. So my belief is when you're creating a product with an artist exterior to the artist identity, it makes sense to be an equity participant. Or if you become the record label, and this is something that like some managers can do. I genuinely could launch an artist song. I could start a record label tomorrow, and I would know what to do.
Well, I would think that's the natural step for Rare Society, in my opinion.
Maybe. I'm very, very excited and enthused to build a management ecosystem right now, and to be smart and slow. I have a couple artists, a couple producers that were nominated for a bunch of Grammys this year. My artist is touring really well. I have a development artist. It's a very small roster of 5, and I'm excited about it. I still have to scale staff. I have to build staff underneath me to support me having more freedom to do more things.
Right.
If I get into the record label sector, I need to provide value to that. It's like when labels, major labels, not me, went to a 360 model. We're not making enough money off of music, so we want 360 rights.
Right.
And artists found out about this in real time. Was like, well, what does that mean?
Right.
Well, every brand deal you get, we get a chunk. You're touring. We're gonna get a chunk of your touring because we need to make. We're hemorrhaging money. Napster killed us, and so they started taking all this, but they weren't initially providing to value. That business. Yeah. It's like, wait a minute, you just took a piece of my touring. Like, are you guys gonna help me tour more? No, we don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Why are you taking a piece of my touring?
Yeah.
Because we gave you a check for tour support. You made that recoupable. That's not an investment, or there's not equity participant there. Like you said, here's a check, but you owe it to us to help us tour. Like, no. If you're gonna take a piece of my touring, you better help me build it. Like, do you have someone that could say, hey, we've vetted a bunch of tour managers. This one's perfect. Here's the rate you should pay them, or whatever. Well, that's pretty valuable. Like, thank you for that. Like, I need a lighting director. We got you. This person did the best lighting director. If you're gonna provide value to the touring side, maybe I understand the conversation. So for me, as an individual, to say, hey, I'm gonna start a record label with my management clients, I better be a full service record label. I can navigate you through the waters all day, and maybe that's worth something. We'll have a conversation about it. But until I have the capabilities of time to say, no, I'm gonna take this song start to finish. And if I feel like at any point in that start to finish journey, I don't have the manpower or the bandwidth or the capital to keep this going, then I need to partner with someone and put my ego aside and say, hey, I need help because there's something successful here that I can get to 60x, but to get to 6,000x, I need someone else.
Well, to your point, if you don't have the capital and you do say you have a 50-50 partnership, well, you might actually make less than if you're taking the 10 to 20% commission.
Yeah.
Because there's a reinvestment back into the company, obviously, if you're standing behind the cost.
Yeah.
Which I think was Lex was meant to say. But yeah, like by the end of the year, your revenue might be 900,000.
Yeah.
But your expenses are 850,000. So all of a sudden that 50,
which is really easy, by the way.
Very easy, because you're reinvesting trying to grow a business. So that profit margin, EBITDA, is non-existent. You might be in the red at that point.
Yeah.
Right. So to your point,
it's oh man, touring is fun, but it's also you gotta check your margins. Like, make sure you're making money. Like, even when it's raining money and bags are coming in from everywhere, you start spending a bunch of money. You realize like those costs add up
real fast.
Real fast. And it's like, well, we're investing. I made this mistake really early on in my management career where I had an artist that wasn't streaming. I was their manager, not their record label. And because, I started Rare Society a year ago, but I've been managing writers and producers and artists for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I had an artist where all my commissions came in, and it was such a learning moment for me. All my commissions came in, and our show was the catalyst for excitement. And we made tons of money in merch and shows. We didn't make any money in music because it was art for the sake of art, and it was not commercial. It was very niche. But the touring business was building, and we started doing these crazy productions in 2,500 cap rooms that cost way more than we were making. And the way that we were able to do that is we were using the money from merch, reinvesting it in the show. I was using my commissions, reinvesting in the show. But I didn't articulate to that artist enough that, like, your show is our show now because I just took $20,000 out of my pocket and gave it to you. You never felt that because it never went into my pocket. And I talked to one of my business manager friends. He's like, if you ever do that again, you have the artist wire you the money, It's going to cost $35 for the wire, or $30, whatever it is. You have the artist wire you the money, and then you have your accountant wire them back the money,
Right.
so that they understand, I just gave you $20,000. That was not yours. That was my sweat equity into it, and I didn't do that. And we ended up parting ways, and I didn't commission one of our 3 very successful tours. And I was like, man, I was investing in something that I was not an IP owner of. I was not an equity participant of. I was the president of operations. They were the artists. And it was a really important learning moment for me as a manager. And I'm glad it happened, because I've learned that since. And I definitely, I've done that many times after that, where I invest in the artists. I'm like, hey, I want to spend my money on this shop. I'm doing it in Mexico. Like, I'm spending all my money on the shop. It's like, your money is spent, my money is spent. We have other partners who are like, we invest, we're getting it.
There's a process, and you're communicating.
But we're communicating it, and it's a very distinct understanding of, we're investing in this together, and there's going to be a payoff from it. And so it's been, that one was definitely a learning curve, but it's one of those things where the commission conversation needs to be an open dialogue. And I think that 50%, which is, going viral on your page, and Lex, I know him really well, it's like, what does that really mean? Is it after cost? There's also managers out there and companies out there that genuinely do have the workforce to do both sides. So if I say, hey, I want to sign you as a management client, and then I would actually like to sign a production deal with you, and I would like to release records with you, and I'll be the acting label. I was like, that's just, you talk to some other manager like, oh, that's disgusting. They sign your label, whatever. Yeah, dude, I have 30 people working my records, and I have a staff of people that works for my man. What are you talking about? It's disgusting.
Right.
You have you and your assistant. Shut up. And so I think that there's another side of that. Is just like, understand if they do have the ability to work both sides, it becomes a lot fairer.
Right. Right.
But I don't. I'm management company right now.
Well, listen, you're gonna get there, man. You just started, and it sounds like you're having incredible success. Nick, I really appreciate this time. I've learned a lot, and I can see why you've been so successful in your career, and you're going to continue being successful in your career. Very clear communicator. It's amazing, man. You have a gift.
I appreciate that.
It's great. Do you read a lot?
Podcasts. All I listen to is podcasts.
Because
nonstop.
Because I do ask my guests if they have 3 books that they would recommend. Doesn't have to be in the music business.
I actually do.
Okay,
Everything
please.
You Need to Know About the Music Industry by Donald Passman.
Yes.
I tell everyone I've ever worked with, before I work with them, when I'm courting a new client, I say, read this before you hire me. And if you hire another manager beforehand,
they will not read that book.
I know, but there's podcasts on it now, and there's cliff notes and all this stuff. But
Donald's done a podcast or 2, I think. Yeah.
I was like, you need to know this, because I said, time is only built with trust.
Yeah.
But when you can have someone who has been trustworthy in the music industry, Donald's a legend.
Yeah.
And you see like, oh, these are what people are supposed to make, and this is what they're supposed to do, and this is whatever. It really educates and it levels up an artist real fast. So everything you need to know about the music industry will give you a clear understanding of the business. Shoe Dog by Nike, and they made a movie called Air, but it doesn't do justice.
Yeah.
It articulates the point of failure so well, and the point of vulnerability, and the dedication to like, this is gonna work, and I'm gonna make it work, and I'm gonna take a risk, and I'm gonna everything we talked about today. I'm gonna stand up on the table, and I'm gonna sign Michael Jordan, and it's gonna work. And it did. And it was fascinating to hear and see how important Tiger running shoes and Adidas and all these other companies were before Nike. And now fast forward, Nike's one of the biggest companies on planet Earth, and their force is indomitable. It is seen across every sector of everything. So Shoe Dog is definitely one of them. And then, this is a cliche in the music industry, but it's very good. Malcolm Gladwell's, Outliers. It's a great book.
Yeah.
So I don't
Tipping
read
Point's
much.
another good one too.
Tipping Point I have read. I don't read much. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I do thoroughly enjoy those 3.
Interesting. Nick, man, appreciate you. Thank you so
Thanks
much
for having me on, man.
All right, man.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.